Barbarians are fierce bastards who live in icy wasteland crawling with monsters. Their only food is monster meat, and they're strong as hell. Strong enough to tear monsters apart. With their bare hands, they're so terrifying that just looking at them is enough to make people lose their minds. Our MC ends up in the body of one of these barbarians. He basically becomes Saitama, able to blow up monsters, and even mountains with a single punch. He lives with barbarians for quite a while, until he gets fed up with their ignorance. That's when he decides to find at least one sane person to talk to, who would be crazy enough to enter those monster-filled, frozen lands a noble's carriage. And escorts are passing through the white wasteland. For some reason, one of the mercenaries complains of the freezing cold, and a blonde, muscular captain tells him to wear more clothes, unless he wants to freeze to death. Another person joins in with the protest, arguing that it is a foolish plan to cross this land, even if the prize is hefty. The blonde captain shuts them up, arguing that they had all already signed up for the mission. The other guy replies that they never thought the situation here would be this bad inside the carriage. A butler asks the noble lady of the Akasha family if she is all right. Malena replies with a yes, while an escort outside complains he is going to freeze. The butler finds the intervention pretty rude. However, Malena stops him from being so harsh, as they are the ones who have volunteered as escorts. He even asks the butler to let them in for a while, but the old man refuses, reminding her about the dangers inside this white wasteland. When Malena asks if he means the monsters, the butler tells her about the legend of the emperor, who wanted to claim the entire world. For this purpose, the emperor traveled inside the white wasteland, alongside numerous warriors and soldiers. To conquer it, he stayed there for many decades. And just when his empire collapsed, he returned alone with a stick in his hand. The man had lost all his men, and spoke as if he had gone mad. He explained that the wasteland was full of monsters. However, the most dangerous thing there was not these monsters at all, but the barbarians. The butler, however, adds that this is surely a legend, which they cannot be certain about. Malena argues that his words held so much weight, considering many of the monsters he described have already been confirmed to exist in this place. They then discuss that although there has not been a sighting of these barbarians, to confirm the legend, some weirdo named Euron told countless tales about these beings. Just then the captain asks everyone to stop, as he can vividly see someone approaching them, as he could barely catch a glimpse of him. He tells everyone that he had both good and bad news. The good news is that the thing coming toward them is small in size, and the bad news is that he is not certain if it is a human or a barbarian from the emperor's legend. Unexpectedly, when the barbarian approaches them, he politely says that he was just wandering here and there, after he got sick of looking at the other barbarians. Tal says that he had not expected that he would run into some outsiders, and greets them, saying he is happy to see them. He asks the captain if this is a merchant's carriage, and if they're the guards hired to protect it. When the captain confirms this, the Giant Barbarian suggests they head back, mocking that he is pretty sure they will not listen to him. Cattle goes on to ask if there is someone in the carriage, and while everyone is too scared to utter a single word, the barbarian proposes that he wants to be hired as a mercenary too. The captain asks for confirmation of what cattle meant, and our guy simply repeats himself, explaining that he is offering to help them cross this harsh white wasteland. The captain cannot believe that a barbarian, straight out of the legend, is asking to join them, and all he wants is to be hired. He asks our big guy if he is not hostile towards him, upon which Cattle responds with a bluff that if he were, they would have already hit the grave. The captain asks Malena if she heard all that, asking her for her orders. The lady asks him about the supposed outcome, if they were to fight the big guy, and when the blonde captain says that he will not even think about that, Malena asks him to accept the proposal and hire the barbarian. The blonde captain then turns over to the barbarian and tells him that the noble inside the carriage has accepted his proposal. Cattle finds it to be really good news, and his smile is enough for everyone to make them wet their pants. Tal tells them to relax, and then demands an audience with the one in charge. The captain gets anxious and tells our guy that he will regret it if he tries something. Mercenaries argue that they should stop the Giant Barbarian. However, the captain asks them to stop being fools and argues that the employer has already given her consent. As the butler hears that, he freaks out, but Cattle politely asks if he is allowed to come inside. Cattle gets in and sits next to the butler, which makes the butler pretty uncomfortable. Our boy asks them to chill out, arguing that he has no intention of harming them at all. Lady Malena also appears to be a bit anxious, Yet she warmly greets our guy. Cattle mentions how warm it is inside, and how it must be pretty hard to keep a place like this heated. Melina explains that magic is to blame for this, which gets the otaku lover pretty excited. Cattle then tells her that the place is quite dangerous, and that there is only a slim chance that they can make it through alive, which is why he is offering to protect their lives. He also mentions that he has one condition, and just like that the entire mood turns tense. Melina keeps herself calm and asks the guy what he wants. The barbarian smirks, and all he requests is knowledge of the world beyond these snowfields. Melina finds it pretty odd, and the barbarian makes it clear that it should not be a bad trade, for her sweat slips down her face as she realizes she doesn't really have a choice, and agrees to the proposal. Butler, however, does not seem to approve of this deal at all. Cattle asks the lady about her name, and the lady gently introduces herself as a noble from the house of Akasha. Cattle returns the favor and extends his gratitude for their little journey together. Back on Earth, he always dreamed of living in a fantasy world, and one day that wish weirdly came true. He somehow got ice-skied and woke up as one of those idiotic Ashen Barbarians stranded on a snowfield. He never got the chance to figure out how it happened, since surviving in a freezing wasteland while fighting non-stop waves of tough monsters was already a nightmare on its own. To stay alive, he pulled those dumb barbarians together, formed a clan, and took the lead. Time flew without warning, and all his escape plans turned out to be useless. But everything changed one day, when a system panel suddenly appeared, saying he could finally leave this frozen hell if he completed certain quests. From the very beginning, it felt like some invisible force was keeping him stuck here, and he had nearly lost all hope. Over the years, many outsiders randomly showed up now and then, and from them he found out that the world outside these cursed snowfields really was full of fantasy and magic, just like he had always imagined. Once he finds that out, he starts putting in even more effort and keeps clearing quest after quest, hoping to finally get out of these cursed fields. He also realizes just how valuable outside information is, which is why he asks Melina to trade some, in exchange for helping her group cross through safely. Until now, everyone he met either freaked out or pulled a weapon on him, treating him like a monster. So he's honestly just glad to finally have a normal conversation with someone. The barbarians he was stuck with were completely brain dead, and talking to a proper human being for once actually calms his mind a bit. Out of nowhere, Cattle asks the lady if they are transporting weapons. When Melina asks what made him think that, he says he heard the sharp clanging of metal from the wagon, which is a dead giveaway. He then asks her if there's a war going on beyond these frozen lands, and Melina's expression darkens as she confirms that the Empire and the Kingdom are currently locked in battle. She adds that the Empire is huge and trying to conquer the Kingdom, but so far the Kingdom is managing to hold its ground. She credits this to the Swordmaster and the hero, who are guarding the borders. Atal seems curious and asks what kind of powers these people have, and Melina, surprised, asks if he seriously has no clue about the mysteries, when our barbarian tells her that he's never stepped out of these snowfields. The lady explains that her knowledge is limited too, but she does know that mystery is a real power. In this world, only a handful of people can actually tap into it, and depending on how far they can go, they're granted one of the 5 ranks of strength. The lowest ranks include those who can simply sense mystery, then those who can use it, and finally the ones who can fully manifest it into things like mana or aura, those who can do that are considered first-rate, and often hold titles like spirit summoners, mages, or knights. She says the ranks above those aren't something normal humans can understand, so they're just called transcendants, people who can bend mystery with nothing but their will. The Swordmaster is believed to be someone of that level. And then there's the hero. Someone said, to hold the power to even influence the world itself. Melina adds that even a third-rate person, someone who can barely sense mystery, is still considered powerful. That's when the Ashen Barbarian jumps in, asking to meet such people. Cattle has no clue how long he's been stuck in this cursed place, but now he's more desperate than ever to escape. As he looks at his own reflection in the mirror, he quietly decides that no matter what it takes, he's getting out. That's when Melina asks if he's really a barbarian. Cattle confirms it, wondering if they already know who he is. The lady then brings up the old legend and starts telling him everything about the Emperor, but Cattle cuts her off, smirking, as he says he actually remembers the guy visiting the fields once, and he just thought the man was some crazy lunatic. Back then, When Milena fails to understand what cattle means, he tells her straight that her legend might actually be true. Then he brings up something that's been bugging him for a while, asking why they chose this exact route when they're carrying such a massive load of weapons. Milena's face turns a bit gloomy as she quietly admits that they're stuck under a mountain of debt. She explains that her family has been in the trade business for generations, but people around them got jealous and started sabotaging their deals. All of that left them completely bankrupt. Now, this merchant trip is their last shot at keeping the family name alive. Cattle, using every bit of his brain power, puts the pieces together and guesses that she must be trying to sell the weapons to the kingdom. When Milena curiously asks how he figured that out, Cattle explains that if the empire is really pushing forward, like she told him earlier, then the kingdom must be the one in need of weapons. That would mean they're willing to pay any price to build up their supply, which makes this dangerous route worth the risk. He even points out that, since she didn't bother taking a safer route, it clearly means the two nations must be sharing a border. Milena looks at him in disbelief. Everything she had heard about barbarians painted them as ignorant and wild, with no sense of logic, but now, seeing one of them lay out everything so clearly makes her start to wonder if he's even a real barbarian. Just then the carriage jerks to a sudden stop, and a loud crashing noise comes from outside, letting them know they've got company. As they quickly hop out of the carriage, with weapons in their hands, they find themselves up against a huge sewer monster with red bloody eyes. The sight of the monster leaves everyone frozen with fear, and the blonde guy just barely manages to mumble that it's a black slime. Cattle inquires if it's really a black slime, and the lady confirms that this is what she has read in the records. When Cattle asks about these records, she explains that in the past, many people tried to conquer this monstrous white snowland, but only a few survived to tell the tale. They mention the names of these beasts in their books, and the black slime is definitely one of them. Then our blue-haired lady asks Cattle if he knows about the monster. He replies with a delightful smile that they are quite chewy and delicious, enough to be used as a bite of joy. With a disgusted face, she asks him if he really treats it as a meal. To this he interrogates if she wants to eat it, and tells her to go catch it herself, to which she hesitantly denies the offer. The next instant the monster approaches them, as if it were waiting for their conversation to end. This creates panic, and the already terrified lady calls out Cattle's name, but he shows no sign of concern. With an expressionless face, he states that they made a deal, that he would protect their lives, and he won't do anything unless they are truly in danger. The lady, already terrified, asks what he means by that. Cattle replies with a smirk that these guys can easily handle a beast of this level. Moreover, he wants to assess what outsiders like them can do. The slimy monster appears in front of the guards. The blonde captain orders his men to deploy their shields to defend themselves. A mercenary quickly follows the order, and the shield doesn't seem to work for a second before the poor guy gets pushed back. The guy with a ponytail jumps at the monster, but he gets thrown back badly as well. His weapon slips from his hand and falls to the ground, and he even spills some blood from his mouth. The captain shouts to his subordinates that the slime can only move in one direction, so they should scatter and work in sync with one another. Upon hearing that, the man in the green cloak charges midair and makes a successful hit on the monster, followed by a second swing. That actually deals some serious damage. Seeing the monster weakening, the captain strikes it again with his sword and commands them to look for its core, as these minor attacks do nothing to it. With successive multiple attacks, they finally manage to find its core, and a fatal blow shatters it, causing it to flow away like mud. Initially surprised, the guards then realize they have won and celebrate their first victory. In this frozen wasteland, victory makes Milena happy. But before they can relax and catch their breath, a white bear suddenly appears in front of the carriage. One of them shouts to aim for its neck. In response, all of them attack its neck at once and finish it. One of the teammates says that it might be possible that the tales of this cold wasteland aren't worth giving attention to, and maybe they are all just the bluffs of madmen. The leader quiets them with a stern voice, stating that they shouldn't be so clumsy, and that they still have to move more than halfway to get to their destination. The man with the green hood curiously questions Cattle's abilities, asking if he's really that strong, as all of it is just stories mentioned by the emperors and legends. According to him, Cattle is just taking advantage of them, and he thinks that, if nothing else, they should see what he is capable of. As they speak of it, the blue-haired lady curiously listens to their talks and questions what they mean by testing. All the guards gather close to her carriage and ask the lady for permission to speak. The green-hooded man says, with confidence, that they're going out of their way to complete her quest and are compelled to do so. Malena comes out of the carriage and tells them that she is grateful for the hard work they are putting into completing this mission. She reminds them that they obliged her request to help them cross this deadly land and stood by her when no one else would dare to. The hooded guy then interrupts her again with a question, asking if Cattle deserves that VIP treatment, since he hasn't even had a single fight since he joined them. The lady of the Akasha family says that she understands what kind of evaluation they want from him. She doubtfully stares at the captain, who speaks in denial that he has already told them he has no say. Cattle, with a smirk on his face, comes out of the vehicle and asks them if they want to see what he is capable of. One of them says that there is no way to test him right now. Cattle, as he comes out of the carriage with his huge, well-toned, muscular body, says that they're going to have another visitor soon. Just then, a dark shadow with bright eyes appears behind them, with a voice echoing that it's going to have a full belly today with the tasty weakling mortals. As the carriers turn around, they see a large snake with red beaming eyes, terrifying them with its sharp teeth and long tongue hanging from its open mouth. The serpent threatens them to struggle as much as they can, because it will make them a lot more appetizing for it. Malena covers her ears in panic, while the mercenaries keep their eyes tightly shut, trying not to move an inch. Kata walks right up to the beast, glowing with a strong purplish energy, and tells the snake to back off, because these people are now under his protection. The big bad white snake starts getting uneasy the moment it lays eyes on Cattle and asks what brings him here. The big bad white snake instantly reminds our guy of those ridiculous snowfield rules about trespassing on someone else's territory, but he quickly brushes that off and tells the snake to stop acting so uptight. The snake roars dramatically, trying to sound intimidating, and says Cattle has no right to speak to it like that. But Cattle is not interested in wasting time arguing. He charges in without saying another word and lands a heavy punch, deciding it is about time this oversized snake learn a lesson. The blow hits hard, enough to shake the entire ground around them, leaving everyone nearby frozen in place. Malena yells out to ask if Lord Cattle is all right, and he replies calmly that he will be done with this quickly and join them soon. He leaps in again, now covered in an overwhelming burst of power that feels almost unnatural, and brings the cocky snake to the ground. In just one strike a little while later, Cattle sits inside the carriage peacefully, while everyone else stays outside, shivering and begging for forgiveness. The barbarian casually turns his face away and says, it is only normal to be suspicious of strangers. At first still, the roles have completely flipped, and now, even the butler is forced to walk out in the snow. With that settled, Cattle leans back and asks the girl why she chose to come all this way by herself despite knowing the danger. She opens up, saying she is the first daughter of Lady Bellica, one of Lord Kesa Kakashi's concubines. Her mother had been married into the family just to fill a political gap and was discarded once she had served her purpose. She says that neither of them is treated as real family members and that they're seen more as disposable servants than anything else. Even though she had not planned to share everything, it all spills out without her meaning to. She says she took on this harsh journey to make an impact and a name in her family. Cattle smirks and says she is clever and ambitious, and a little greedy too. Before the conversation can go deeper, the mercenary captain loudly announces that they have reached the destination and that there is Greenland ahead. As everyone starts preparing to part ways, the blue-haired lady thanks Cattle for everything. He asks how she plans on returning, and she says that she will travel through the empire when the time comes before leaving. She mentions something he said earlier in the carriage about her being smart, and he repeats it without hesitation. He then lays out her entire plan, connecting every dot without missing a beat. He says she wants to make her place in the family and eventually rise to the top. She nods in silence, and to Cattle, this story feels a little too familiar. A child born to a concubine who wants to rise above the title and be recognized as part of the main bloodline. He has seen it all before during his life as an otaku. The girl starts to see how sharp Cattle truly is, much beyond what she expected from a barbarian. She wonders if she can control his strength one day, and tells him to come find her once he leaves the snowfields, offering him a place beside her. Keatle turns her down, saying he still has unfinished business, so she gives him a pendant and tells him to visit her if he ever finds himself in the outside world. Cattle accepts it with a simple smile, calling it a gift without asking too many questions. The butler gives a respectful farewell, and they all go their separate ways, hoping that fate brings them together again someday. 5 full years pass, and Cattle finally completes his 784th quest, which officially grants him the right to leave the snowfields and step into the outside world he has been longing for all along. He peacefully enjoys the scent of the grass and the gentle sound of the river, feeling as though he's finally been summoned to heaven. After enduring a living hell in the snowy wasteland, turning toward the icy plains, he curses the place, hoping with all his heart that he never has to go back there again. He fantasizes about everything he can finally enjoy in this new world of magic, a fervent desire that has kept him alive all this time. He sees the world beyond the snowfields as a place where miracles are commonplace, and his gaze lands on the first civilized village he has ever encountered. He recalls talking to those idiotic barbarians back home about building a proper shelter, but they were entirely clueless, preferring to simply sleep in dug-up snow for protection from the elements. Having sorely missed the structure of human civilization, he wonders how he should go about greeting the people of this new world. He decides to act like a gentleman and walks toward the village. Meanwhile, in the village, an old elven geezer is telling the other elves that this place is now their new home and asks them to unpack their belongings. One of the elves asks if the place is truly safe, and the geezer explains that he has chosen a remote area where humans cannot possibly reach. He further explains that the nearby snowy fields make it a place no one would ever dare to enter, and they don't even need to worry about monsters, as there are no records of anyone ever coming out of those fields. The geezer also adds that they have placed a powerful barrier that makes the village look like an ordinary forest, hiding its true appearance. He says they created it after working for months with ancient elven magic, and is absolutely sure no one can come near them as long as the barrier holds. On top of these measures, they even have a powerful elven queen who could protect them from anything. Right on cue, our boy Cattle casually strolls through the all-powerful barrier like it's just morning mist. He feels something odd for a second, like walking through a spider web, but shrugs it off and continues. That's when he sees a young elf girl standing nearby, looking like she just lost her entire family. She scans her surroundings, visibly panicking, and the moment her eyes land on the towering human, who greets her with a friendly hello, she immediately short-circuits and collapses on the spot. Cattle catches her before she can fall, wondering what just happened. He thinks to himself that if he takes the child back to her village, the elves might hold him in high regard. Given how gentle elves are supposed to be, he believes they might even welcome him in. He blushes at the thought and carries her to the village. However, the moment the villagers see him, it's like someone set off a panic bomb. The girl's mother immediately breaks down, sobbing like she just saw a ghost holding her child. The elder stands frozen, probably rethinking his entire speech about how foolproof their barrier was. After a long moment of useless silence, he snaps out of it, panics, and yells that the barrier's been breached, demanding to know where the queen is. It appears that the so-called queen is out on patrol. Cattle tries to tell them that he is not their enemy, but they keep throwing threats at him. The geezer thinks of a million possibilities, like the human having come to raid them with full preparations, or having been tracking them for a while. As the poor barbarian is accused of being a kidnapper, he wonders how he can clear up the misunderstanding. He gently wakes up the little kid, who is still in tears, and tells her to go to her parents. All the kid sees in him is a monster, and she runs off crying. Cattle, however, is left shocked, as he always thought he looked pretty decent. He tries to explain to the persistent idiots that he is not their enemy, but the old geezer instead argues that the hostage has been released and orders everyone to attack. The poor barbarian stands there in shock, as none of what he says seems to get through to the elves, even with their famously big ears. The elves seem far more savage than Cattle had ever imagined, and whatever legends he had once heard about their peaceful nature now feel completely misplaced in this moment. Still, he chooses to brush it off as nothing more than a natural reaction to an unexpected intruder. Arrows continue to rain down on him in relentless waves, yet every single one bounces off without effect. Then, with a simple clap of his hands, Cattle unleashes a force so powerful that several elves are blown off their feet, sent tumbling through the air like leaves in a storm, while the old elf geezer watches this scene unfold in silent disbelief. Cattle continues, insisting that he has no hostile intentions, It means them no harm. A passing thought crosses his mind, that perhaps he went too far, and this display of strength has only deepened their fear. Just as he begins to consider pulling back, a sudden burst of heat alerts him to a flaming arrow, flying at him from behind, its glow cutting sharply through the cold. It turns out the queen, who had been away on patrol, has now returned to defend her people from what she assumes to be a deadly threat. The regal leader of the Leaf clan, known by the name Marcellia Hazian Courageous blah blah, demands an explanation for the chaos. Wasting no time, the old elf quickly points at Cattle, accusing the poor outsider of attacking their village. Without provocation, Cattle keeps urging them to at least let him speak. But the sight of him, standing tall without a single wound, leaves both Marcellia and the elder visibly unsettled. The queen spits out a comment about how disgusting humans are, then lunges at him with full confidence that she can easily crush someone like him. In that moment, Cattle quietly begins to wonder if they even understand a word he's saying, or if they're deliberately choosing not to. He suspects their harshness may come not from fear, but from a deep-rooted hatred between elves and humans. He recalls from his time in the snowfields that people only start listening once you land a proper hit. As those thoughts pass through his mind, the queen launches an attack that takes the shape of a mighty dragon. Without much effort, Cattle punches it straight back, and the impact tears through the space around the queen, leaving him wondering if he should start. Holding back a little, the elf queen takes the hit and crashes down, realizing that this guy has to be above the level of a transcendent. Gritting her teeth, she tells her people to run while they can, staying behind herself in an attempt to slow the barbarian down. She yells at him, calling him a human and acknowledging his strength, but she also swears not to let him succeed in whatever twisted purpose he came here for. Cattle finds himself completely ignored once again, slowly realizing that things have now gone from bad to worse. As her final move, the queen summons a blazing bull spirit named Pigo, fully confident that this creature will take care of the intruder. The poor barbarian, though, lights up with joy at the sight, as every monster he fought in the snowfield was ugly and weird, nothing like this magnificent beast. While he admires the bull covered in flames, Marcia wastes no time and commands her summon to destroy the man standing before her. The spirit seems to be a high-grade fire entity, older, prouder, and far more powerful than the usual ones, just as ancient spirits tend to be. Marcellia knows well that her own strength isn't enough to summon something like this alone. To form the contract, she had to ask for help from another tribe, never imagining she'd be forced to call upon it under these circumstances. Now she orders it to fulfill its contract. The fireball, steady and stern, asks if his contract is simply to annihilate the human before him. But even he starts to sweat nervously when he lays eyes on the so-called human, and wonders aloud if that's really what this creature is, as this is his first time seeing a summoned beast. In real life, Cattle is honestly amazed by how cute and majestic the summon looks, while the elf queen turns to Pago and tells him that this is the human who has intruded on the sacred elven lands, and for that she wants him dead. Hearing this, Pago casually decides he will incinerate the guy until there is nothing left but ashes, since he is the human foolish enough to mess with the sacred race, while our boy just stands there like it's no big deal, mostly because he has no clue what is even going on. Pigo gets ready to launch his attack and dashes straight at him, while he still stands there doing nothing, making zero effort to even move out of the way. As the bull's spirit smashes into him, a massive explosion erupts, and the elf queen assumes he is dead. But to her shock, he stops the spirit with only one hand, as he has gotten used to beating up wild beasts on the regular. He feels like this beast form actually puts him weirdly at ease, mostly because it makes things a whole lot easier for him to slay it without holding back. He punches Pigo with so much force, it feels like the earth itself might split clean in two, like a massive volcano just erupted beneath their feet. But in reality, that is only a few % of his true power. After things calm down, the elf queen barely survives the explosion and stands there feeling powerless in front of him. She stares in total disbelief, shaken by the gap in power, and ends up begging him to spare her entire clan. He calmly tells her he is not their enemy, and hearing that response leaves her genuinely astonished. After a more detailed conversation, she finally understands that he really has no hostile intentions toward them. She starts feeling bad as it hits her that her people judge him way too quickly, and apologizes for their mistake, as thinking they have seriously insulted the very person who just brought one of their children safely back home. Cattle acts like a total gentleman and says it is all good, explaining that since they were pushed here by humans, it made sense to see someone and assume they were the enemies still. It is a little sad that no one gave him the chance to talk it out. The queen is still confused and asks if he really is not one of the humans chasing after them. And he tells her this is actually his first time even seeing an elf, because they do not exist in the white snowfields. Hearing the name of the snowfield surprises her, and he adds that outsiders call him the Giant Barbarian of the wasteland. The queen is completely stunned, since she never thought any normal person could survive in that kind of place. And she then asks if others might also be able to leave the wasteland. Like he did, our boy says he is not entirely sure, but he seriously doubts that anyone else besides him can pull off something like that. He believes there are fixed, definitive rules in the wasteland that even monsters like the Great Serpent cannot break. But for some unknown reason, he is able to bypass them through quests. And that has to be an incredibly rare exception. The queen breathes a sigh of relief after all that, while he casually asks if her cute summon is okay, since he did split it clean in two with a single punch. After all, she assures him that the spirit is completely fine, because all spirits are beings of pure nature, and simply return to the spirit realm when forcibly unsummoned. She then asks if there is anything she can do for him, and admits her people have been quite rude to him. After thinking it through for a moment, he asks if other beings are also able to form contracts with spirits, and she replies that normally it is not possible, but humans with a high affinity for nature can sometimes make those contracts. She adds that if he truly wants to try, then he should visit Elfo Sagrado. That is the holy land of the elves, where the Lord of the Elves is said to reside, and they might be willing to help him form a proper spirit contract. All excited, he asks if a human will really be allowed into the holy land of elves. She explains that it should not be a problem with her personal introduction, and that he has to keep everything a secret. The elf queen quietly thinks that Elfo Sagrado is every elf researcher's dream destination, and allowing a human near that place is seriously risky, since it is more precious to the elves than their own life. No one ever reveals its location, but she decides to trust him and hands over a glowing crystal to take with him. She tells him that the elf lord will test his worth, but she is confident he will pass, and wishes him good luck. She then formally introduces herself as the queen of the Leaf Tribe, Marcellia Caruja, and asks for his name, which he gives as Cattle the Barbarian. After confirming the location, he dashes through the forest straight toward it, quickly closing in on the border of the Varkan territory, under the kingdom of Gahint. The guards on watch start to panic when they spot a giant cloud of dust racing toward them at ridiculous speed, and they rush to get ready for battle. He tells the guards that he is genuinely pleased to meet them standing, hearing that the scared guards recognize right away, from his gray hair and the large scar on his chest, that he is the infamous Giant Barbarian. They immediately warn him to stop where he is, or they will attack if he takes another step forward. But he tells them to chill out, explaining that he is not their enemy in any way. The guards ask what exactly he wants, and he simply points toward the wall, which understandably leaves them a little confused. Seeing that, he explains that all he wants is to visit the domain for a bit and nothing more. Inside the knight captain's office, the captain asks if his only goal is to pass through, and he replies that he also plans to stay for a while, though he is honestly not sure how long that stay will last. Then the captain asks for his name, so he introduces himself as Cattle, and when he asks our boy if he has anything or anyone to verify his identity, he says no until he suddenly remembers the crest given to him by Milena. He shows the crest to the guard and casually asks if it is good enough to prove who he is. The guard doesn't recognize it, asks what it even is, so he explains that it is the crest of the house of Akasha, which was given to him by someone of that bloodline. The captain mentions that they must be the merchant family from the Denayan kingdom, and Cattle asks if he knows them. The captain says it is a rising house that has been growing rapidly since the new head took over recently. Though the guard says the crest does not look fake, he adds that he still cannot verify his identity properly, since the crest is not from the kingdom of Gehendra. Even so, he agrees to let him pass, but only on the condition that they first confirm he poses no threat to the domain. The guard explains that 3 other people are also trying to pass through, and he must form a temporary party with them to clear the nearby dungeon outside the domain. He thinks that the condition sounds really easy, so he accepts without complaint, and the guard adds that the other rule is to report everything that happens inside. After hearing this, he immediately figures out that they are making the group observe each other, so they can secretly evaluate if anyone seems suspicious. Guard looks genuinely surprised that he picked up on all that, and asks if he's really the barbarian, since he always thought they were just a brute race, and this is the first one he has met who actually seems like him. The guard says they should get going. Now that everything is clear, the scene shifts to an old man named Alessandro Tyrannus, a self-proclaimed paladin, who finds it absolutely tragic that he has to enter a dungeon with a rat who steals people's pouches, even if the law allows it. The thief in question, Sinhark, gets annoyed hearing the old man complain, and asks if Tyrannus is mad at him for no real reason, just because some random thief scammed him once and ran off with his life savings. That comment sets Tyrannus off, and he gets irritated that a petty thief dares to insult a paladin like him, but Kazan shoots back that he is not even a real paladin, because if he was, then he would not be here in the first place. He also says Tyrannus is just another bottom feeder who clings to the title because his name sounds dumb. Tyrannus becomes visibly mad on hearing that and points his sword at the thief, but Kazan asks if he seriously thinks that his beat-up armor is going to save him, right as they are about to start fighting. The cleric Hayes politely asks them both to stop, and they listen, even though they clearly want to throw down. Hayes starts wondering if it is really okay to dive into a dungeon with these two maniacs, as the minimum number of people required is 4. That means another person still has to arrive before they can go inside. Suddenly the door opens and the guard steps in, announcing that their final member has just arrived. The thief jokes that hopefully it is not another whack job, like the so-called paladin, and the guard just tells him to go look for himself. As Cattle enters the room with a quiet "Budominatinyoha," all three of them feel chills and freeze up, overwhelmed by fear as he casually walks in with a cheerful smile. That does not match his build at all. He tells them it is nice to meet his new party members. While everyone is still processing, the guard steps back and says they should talk things out among themselves, since he will return shortly. After that, our boy suggests they start with introductions, and says that he is Cattle the Barbarian. Then he turns to Kazan, who nearly chokes as he says he is a thief, while Sir Tyrannus announces that he is a paladin. Tal gets excited on hearing that, because he knows paladins usually use holy powers, but Tyrannus quickly lets him down by saying he is a special kind of paladin who cannot use any of them. Next, the lady shyly introduces herself as Hayes, cleric who serves the god Kaloja. He asks why she is hesitating so much, even though clerics are proud of their job, and she explains that it is because Kaloja is the lord of lies and deceit, which makes him not very popular among the others. As they continue talking, the captain opens the door again and tells them they will be heading out now, if everyone is ready to move. The whole party follows him without delay, and they finally arrive at the entrance of the dungeon. There the captain shows them the front of the dungeon, and explains that it is a 3-floor dungeon, filled mostly with undead monsters, and their mission is to clear it completely, and return with the required proof. With that, Cattle kicks off the raid, and casually asks Kazan if he has a plan in mind. Hearing this, the thief suddenly gets nervous, and addresses him as Sir Katali. So our boy tells him to drop the Sir, since they are a team, and should leave behind all formalities and fancy titles. Kazan hears that and decides to just act normal. So without hesitation he says, Cattle and the warrior will hold the front lines, while he checks for traps, and the nun supports them all from the rear. Cattle is honestly impressed by the clean formation, and the other two agree as well. So with that, the team begins their exploration inside the dungeon. Hayes quietly thinks to herself that the place is far too dark, while the thief gets suspicious because there are none of the usual traps or tricks around. Suddenly he tells everyone to stop moving, because there are monsters nearby. He cannot see anything clearly, but there are bone fragments scattered on the floor, which are the remains of skeleton monsters that attack if anyone steps too close. Kazan thinks the guards probably knew this dungeon was dangerously difficult, so they lied about it being a simple identity test, and are just using the dungeon as a tool to quietly eliminate any suspects. Cattle acts like he has no clue what is going on, so Kazan breaks it down for him, explaining that skeletons are undead monsters that keep moving even after losing their limbs. And since they are all bone, their defense is naturally really high. He tells Hayes to get her powers ready, and signals Tyrannus to prep his shield, also advising Cattle to be careful, because this dungeon is going to be way tougher than they first thought. Kazan tells everyone that they should focus on distracting the skeletons, so he can find an opening and strike their necks, since that is a weak point and the only way to properly kill a skeleton. As Cattle steps closer to one of the skeletons, it suddenly rises while the others prepare for a fight. But instead of attacking, he casually slaps it so hard that it turns to dust on the spot. Everyone just stares in disbelief, and Cattle turns to Kazan with a big smile, saying he was right about them going down if you hit the head. But poor Kazan just laughs in confusion, because that is definitely not what he meant by hitting the head. Skeletons are made of solid bone, and they are further reinforced by dungeon mana, which makes it practically impossible for an average swordsman to slice through them. In one hit, the only real way to beat them is by repeatedly striking the neck bones until they snap, and crushing a skull should not even be possible through regular means. The son already knew the barbarian is strong, but this level of power is way beyond what he expected. And now he seriously questions if Cattle is even human. Everyone just stands around staring at the pile of dust, while our boy simply says they should keep moving. Slightly spooked, they all hurry toward him the moment he gives the order. He tells them there is no need to rush, to which Kazan agrees though. Tyrannus and Hayes are both just praying they make it out alive. As they continue exploring the dungeon, Cattle suddenly spots a skull lying on the ground, along with a few more skeletons nearby. The other three brace themselves, thinking this time they might actually have to help out. Just then, Cattle turns to them and politely asks for a favor. All three act confused, wondering what kind of favor he would need from scrubs like them in this situation. He tells them that he wants to deal with the skeletons on his own, since there is something he wants to try out. Kazan just shrugs and says he could do whatever he wants, and Hayes and Tyrannus also give him the go-ahead. They stand back, wondering what kind of experiment he is about to run, while Cattle flashes them a quick thanks. As one of the skeletons rises up, Cattle is completely fascinated by the way it assembles, and wonders out loud how it is all put together. The skeleton goes in with a full swing, trying to slice him with its sword, but Cattle effortlessly catches the blade between two fingers and breaks it like a twig. He asks what the skeleton is planning to do now, but it does not hesitate at all. It jumps high and goes for another attack. Our boy dodges the strike smoothly, grabs the skeleton's arm, and asks the scrawny thing what will happen if he does this. He slams the arm into the floor, turning it to dust, and the skeleton just stands there, staring at its missing limb in visible confusion. Then it tries to act cool, kicks the sword up into the air like a gangster, and grabs it in its other hand to fight for its undead life. But Cattle's Nagatoro tier bullying doesn't stop there. The skeleton charges again, but our barbarian grabs its remaining hand and rips that one off too, instantly reducing it to dust like the first. The poor skeleton still refuses to quit and starts flailing its broken arms at him. Our boy grabs it and completely crushes the right arm for good. He is genuinely impressed that the skeleton can substitute its body parts and has such high intelligence, while the rest of the party just watches in stunned silence, pitying the poor skeleton getting clowned on. Ace feels a chill run down her spine as she watches the scene unfold, while Kazan and Tyrannus look like their souls just exited their bodies. At that moment, they truly realize what kind of monster a real barbarian is, as Cattle stands in front of the broken skeleton with a proud, menacing smile like it's the start of his villain arc. The others stare in horror as Cattle uses brute force to detach the head from the skeleton's body and chuck it onto the ground, all the while looking like a complete psycho. He then finds it oddly amusing that the creature really cannot move without its head, before smashing the skull with his foot, like some kind of villain. Like seeing that scene, a cold shiver runs down the spines of the other three, as Cattle casually apologizes for the delay. After acting like a demon, he has clearly become completely terrified of him. Kazan nervously says it is no issue at all, and politely requests Sir Cattle to take all the time that he needs. Our boy just nods, not understanding the situation, and says he is glad they are being so polite to him. With that, he says they should head deeper again, and the other three quickly agree with him, like they're hostages at gunpoint. After exploring for a bit more time, they finally reach the stairs that lead down to the second floor of the dungeon. Once they enter the new floor, Kazan suggests they take some rest before exploring any further. Cattle agrees and says it would be best if they all rest for a while. Hearing that, Kazan is honestly overjoyed that Lord Barbarian has benevolently granted his humble request. While they are resting, the three of them sit in one corner of the room, while Cattle quietly sits in the other, and no one really says anything. Then, out of nowhere, our hero tosses out that he wants to ask them something about the dungeon. All of them instantly get alerted and ask what he wants to know. Our boy looks a little embarrassed, but still admits that his knowledge about this kind of thing is really minimal, so Hayes panics a bit and tells him that having the desire to learn is a virtue, and she herself is pretty thirsty for knowledge too. After getting the go-ahead, Cattle says this dungeon is situated really close to the territory and asks if there are any concerns about the monsters inside escaping. Ace calmly explains that under normal conditions, monsters from dungeons do not come out of them. But of course there are rare exceptions, and those cases are promptly reported and dealt with. Kazan jumps into the conversation and says that since dungeons are an unknown kind of natural disaster, they tend to have wildly different appearances. Some show up as caves while others look like towers. Most dungeons always manifest near highly populated areas. For some reason, that makes way more sense to Cattle about why this dungeon is present here. And Hayes tells him that the local lord usually assesses the danger level when a dungeon appears, and then dispatches guards or mercenaries accordingly. But sometimes, outsiders like them are also used to clear it. After hearing all this, our boy finds it interesting that dungeons never manifest inside territories. And Kazan confirms that is correct, because they always form at a certain distance. With his face all lit up, Cattle asks if there is any kind of reward for a successful conquest, and Hayes confirms that, saying there is a boss waiting at the final floor. If they manage to defeat it, then they get really good rewards, especially since this dungeon is a pretty large one, and the boss is just as difficult. Our boy grins widely on hearing that, and mumbles that it is just like a game. And when a nun gets curious about what he means by that, he dodges the question by saying he was just talking to himself. Then he says that he wants to ask one more thing, and then inquires who exactly is the one who creates these dungeons. Genuinely surprised by the question, Hayes tells him that no one really makes them, as they are considered natural phenomena. But our boy explains that there are still way too many odd details, if that is really the case. The first thing is how they always appear near populated places, almost like they are demanding to be explored. It feels more like they are tempting people with treasure, which sounds way too deliberate for something natural. Hayes thinks what he is saying actually makes a lot of sense, but she admits she never really thought about it that way. Casson also agrees it sounds suspicious, but says that since it was taught as a truth of their world, so he never questioned it either. It is a well-known fact, so there was no reason to doubt it. But the thief wonders how this barbarian is smart enough to question the truths of the world. From what he knows, barbarians are supposed to be brainless savages, but Cattle clearly does not fit the description of a typical barbarian. Our boy finds their insights quite interesting, and then asks if everyone has rested enough. After they all reply that they are ready to move on, he leads them deeper inside to continue the dungeon exploration. After wandering around for quite a long while, they suddenly stumble upon a treasure chest. Casson explains that it is a proper treasure chest, and it is one of the rewards hidden inside labyrinths. But you can only claim it if you are able to unlock it. First, the thief looks at the chest and thinks that to open something of this quality, you would need someone who is a master at lockpicking, since someone with that level of skill would have no business in a place like this. He figures they will probably have to abandon the chest altogether, but Cattle tells him to go ahead and open the lock, since this is a treasure chest, and that is literally his whole thing as a thief. He repeats that it is his only job in their team, but Kazan starts sweating buckets, thinking the problem is that if he really was capable of such a thing, he would not be in this trashy dungeon. He is just a budget ninja, a peasant at the bottom of the food chain, who is not even acknowledged by the Thieves Guild. But he cannot admit that, when the barbarian has so many expectations from him. If he says he cannot do it, then all of Cattle's excitement will instantly turn into infuriating disappointment. And the result of disappointing a barbarian might end up with him looking like that poor skeleton. So in the end, he decides to give it a try. He pulls out his lock-picking gear, while Cattle watches from behind, with childlike excitement, at seeing a real thief at work, with our boy looming over him and admiring the details. Kazan tries to recall every lock-picker he saw, while working as a porter for other thieves. Guy locks it hard, thinking that if he fails to open this chest, then he is basically dead, and that pressure ends up activating his hidden skill, called Cry of the Soul after a while. Kazan suddenly hears a faint sound, and Cattle thinks that he must have broken something. But in reality, the lid of the chest slowly starts to open, and seeing this unfold, Kazan feels so glad that tears of joy start flooding out. Hayes cannot believe he actually did it, because she always heard that only skilled thieves can open a treasure chest. and witnessing it herself. She thinks Kazan is a pro. Our boy is also quite impressed by his unexpected success and compliments him for the good work, while Kazan pretends he did it on purpose. The guy himself has no clue how he pulled it off, and he always prided himself on living the best life he could. But after seeing what he is capable of, he is starting to question what his best even was, and whether he was living a lie this whole time. While Kazan is quietly depressed from all of this, Cattle casually asks about the value of the reward they just found. Hayes tells him that with this kind of quantity, someone could not only easily feed a regular family for a whole month, but also live quite a luxurious month at that. Hearing that, Cattle smiles and tells Kazan to look after the valuable rewards. Kazan takes the items out of the chest, but he nearly wets himself when they catch him, sneakily trying to slip some into his own sack. Everyone asks him if something happened, but he awkwardly denies everything, like nothing is wrong later. They come across a random pile of bones, lying on the floor, and from the looks of it, there appear to be 4 skeletons. So our barbarian says that he will take care of 3 skeletons, and leave the last one for the rest of them to handle. Everyone agrees with the plan, as they quietly wonder if this even counts as a real battle. The moment they slowly get in range of the pile of bones, the skeletons begin assembling, as the scary, spooky skeletons ferociously roar at the party. Everyone quickly prepares for the fight, and Cattle confidently shouts at the skeletons to bring it on. Kazan charges in first and lands a clean hit, but as the other 3 skeletons try to gang up on him, our boy casually grabs them with his giant arms and hugs them from behind, so they do not interfere with the fight. He tells them not to interrupt, because he wants to observe how his teammates fight. On their own, the sun dashes toward the skeleton again and strikes its neck with his blade, but it is still not enough to kill it. The skeleton then swings back with an attack, which Tyrannus manages to block with his large shield. Meanwhile, Hayes casts Shadow of Confusion on Tyrannus' sword, and he uses it to land another powerful strike on the skeleton's nape as a result of the clean attack. A crack forms along the skeleton's thick neck bone. Seeing this level of coordination from a fresh party honestly impresses Cattle, and he thinks it is pretty rare for a group of strangers to work together this smoothly. With that, he quickly crushes the 3 skeletons into magical powder and decides to enjoy the show, now that he has gotten rid of the noisy distractions. When the other 3 watch him stand there and calmly observe them, they immediately understand that the barbarian is trying to test them, and that they are screwed if they show even the slightest kind of weakness. So to prove they are not weak, all 3 of them gang up on the poor skeleton, while it quietly waits there to meet its sad and inevitable end. With the last skeleton finally down, the 3 of them sit down together and get some much-needed rest. And after casually assessing an average human skills from the short fight, our boy starts thinking that the humans who came to the wasteland with Milena were much stronger as they move on to the 3rd floor. The number of skeletons increases drastically, but since Cattle is leading from the front, the party is able to push forward without any real difficulty, and it feels nothing like a dungeon, because he makes the way too easy. After some time, they finally reach the deepest part of the dungeon, where the boss of the entire dungeon, called the Skeleton Knight, is sitting ominously on a throne. Seeing the Skeleton Knight up close, the other 3 are completely terrified, and Hayes is unable to understand why something like that would even be here. Cattle asks if this skeleton is any different from the others they have faced so far, and she replies that it is much stronger compared to anything they have seen. She goes on to explain that the Skeleton Knight is a powerful monster who freely wields both a long sword and a heavy shield. They honestly have no chance against it, unless they have a fighter, at least on the level of an elite knight, on their side, so their chances of surviving this fight are pretty much equal to 0. Right now our boy gets curious and asks what happens if they cannot clear it and decide to retreat instead. Hayes explains that the territory will send a request for confirmation, and if it is confirmed to be a true report, then it will likely be dealt with by the authorities. Fairly quickly hearing that, our boy smiles to himself while saying that it sounds pretty reasonable before he starts walking straight toward the Skeleton Knight, seeing that the other 3 just stand there, frozen in confusion about what exactly he plans to do. As he moves closer, the eye sockets of the Skeleton Knight suddenly glow a deep crimson red as it awakens from its long slumber. Noticing that a skeleton is already in its assembled form, our boy realizes the boss is different from the rest. Just then the boss pulls back its sword and Hayes quickly figures out what it is planning to do. So she immediately casts a barrier to protect everyone from the massive energy beam that fires from the skeleton knight's sword. However, she soon realizes her powers are way too weak. It does not take long before the barrier shatters, completely leaving only Tyrannus to block the attack with everything he has. While Hayes gasps desperately for air, the paladin barely manages to hold back the devastating blow. But what really catches his attention is that a single strike from a monster has enough raw force to destroy both a magical barrier and a frontline tank, making it very clear that the edgy boss, covered in heavy armor, is definitely no joke. At that moment, Skeleton stares him down with a deadly glare, and suddenly launches itself at full speed. But like always, he just stands there calm and unbothered, then casually jabs the boss so hard, its bones literally vaporize on the spot. After taking a hit, with force that rivals a full-speed truck, the poor skeleton's upper half flies clean off, leaving everyone in the room standing there, with their jaws dropped in complete amazement. Meanwhile, our barbarian casually dusts off his hands, and feels just a bit disappointed that it all ended way too quickly. Then his eyes catch something interesting, and he instantly yells at Cass-san to come over, right now staring at the fancy treasure chest, sitting at the bottom of the dungeon. He asks the thief if he can unlock it. Kazan quickly shuts that down, and makes it clear that it is way above his level, since the lock is high grade, and he does not have the skill to handle it at all. After saying that, Kazan sighs, and mutters how it is such a shame they found the treasure, but cannot open it until he sees the barbarian go mad, and smack the wooden chest so hard that it starts smoking from sheer friction. Tyrannus and Hayes also stare in frozen shock, as he grins, and declares that the rewards earned with violence are always the best kind after that. He tells Kazan to take care of whatever is inside, and the thief finds it wild that someone actually smashed open a treasure chest, like that. It makes him wonder even more why he was asked to open it in the first place, when a guy clearly could have handled it faster himself anyways. With that out of the way, the party finally exits the dungeon, and Cattle gets surprised as soon as he walks out without warning. The roof of the dungeon entrance collapses, but Kazan barely reacts because it is well known that dungeons disappear like that once they are fully cleared, which means they did not miss any secret rooms. Hearing that secret rooms exist gets him even more hyped about future dungeon dives and what he might find next. Back at the border, the guard is utterly speechless when he realizes the sketchy party somehow made it back alive and intact. Sweat runs down the guard's face as he nervously asks Cattle and the others how it went, and the barbarian cheerfully tells him that it was an absolute blast. The guard looks mildly disturbed by that energy, but he still moves on to the next step, which is interrogating each of them one by one about everything that went down inside the dungeon. First up is Hayes, and she calmly says that she did not notice anything unusual or problematic during the mission. However, the captain is not quite convinced and questions whether she really thinks it is acceptable for a barbarian to be allowed inside the domain in the first place. Hearing that, she seems a little unsure what to say, because she knows the interview is clearly meant to identify any potential risks. After her, Kazan steps forward and says that Cattle does not seem like some mindless barbarian who would cause trouble for anyone. The guard appears surprised to hear that someone with such overwhelming strength did not abuse it or harm his teammates, which he finds very unusual and worth noting. Finally, when it is Cattle's turn for the interview, he gives fair comments about each party member and offers genuine praise where it is due. That throws the guard off again, since normally the people he throws into dungeons together end up blaming or trash talking each other during these follow-up sessions. After hearing them all out, the man grants them entry into the territory, but only on a condition that they can be removed at any time if they cause even the slightest trouble. He then hands Cattle a large sack filled with coins as a reward for clearing the dungeon, and even he feels no urge to skim from it after seeing the relaxed smile on Cattle's face. With that, Cattle turns to his party members and tells them to take their share of the reward. They try to turn it down quickly, but he insists that it is only fair, since they did clear the dungeon together as a team. He then suggests they grab a few drinks to celebrate their first mission together, and they nervously agree, because they are not sure how to say no to the Giant Barbarian. So the group strolls toward the main gate, while the guard continues, watching Cattle closely from behind. Still suspicious, he knows the guy has the kind of strength that lets him knock out a dungeon boss with a single hit. which puts him at the level of an elite knight, or maybe even higher than that. That is why the guard quietly tells his men to keep an eye on cattle, while he heads out to speak with the lord of the domain. At the lord's luxurious mansion, the guard receives permission and enters the private chambers. Inside, Luke Barkin, lord of the Barkin domain in the kingdom of Gehentra, calmly asks for the reason behind the urgent report, and the captain tells him that the barbarian from the rumors has appeared. Moving forward, Lord Luke Barkin turns to the captain of the guards and asks whether he gave the barbarian permission. The captain nods and says he did, thinking at the time that wouldn't really cause any big trouble. Lord Barkin now raises a brow and wonders what sort of problem he means. So the captain explains that the barbarian seems way too strong and might stir up serious issues down the line. After hearing that, Lord Barkin leans in and asks how strong exactly, and the captain reveals that the guy knocked out a skeleton knight. With a single blow, Lord Barkin's eyes shoot wide open, since a skeleton knight normally poses a challenge only for trained knights, or someone at an even higher level, and yet somehow a mere barbarian, a class not exactly famous for brainpower, manages to wipe it out with just one hit. Just to be sure, Lord Barkin double-checks whether this means the barbarian counts as first-rate, and the captain responds that the odds of that are pretty high. Then Barkin throws in another question, asking whether he might be even stronger than that. And this time, the captain says he honestly can't rule it out. That answer doesn't sit well with Lord Barkin, who now thinks that having a barbarian of this caliber could easily turn into a royal headache someday, since barbarians live by one rule only, which is that power decides everything. He orders the captain to summon the guy, but the captain hesitates and wonders aloud if that's really a smart idea. Lord Barkin calmly explains that letting someone this powerful roam unchecked within their territory could become a threat to their stability. So laying eyes on the man himself might give him a better sense of control. The captain still has doubts and says the move might be risky, but the Lord reminds him that he has his personal knight right there for protection. He then turns to the knight for a second opinion. Knight confidently replies that, while the barbarian might seem powerful, in the end he's still just a mindless brute who stands no chance against the refined swordsmanship passed down to him by the legendary greatsword master. Lord Barkin nods with satisfaction and gives the command to bring the barbarian so he can handle the matter directly. Meanwhile, our guy Cattle sits with his party absolutely destroying a meal, while the others sit quietly and watch him inhale food like he hasn't eaten in years. He slams his mug down and cheerfully declares how amazing the food tastes and how peaceful the place feels, saying he really likes the vibe. He adds that the meal's on him and tells them to go wild and eat whatever they want, which leaves them all genuinely surprised. He then turns to Sir Tyrannus and asks what sort of divine powers he possesses, since he didn't see anything flashy back when they went through the dungeon together. The paladin scratches his head, clearly embarrassed, and explains that he's still in training and hasn't unlocked his full potential yet. Tal calls that a shame, but quickly shifts attention to the cleric of Kolosia, asking her whether there's a temple nearby. She replies that there likely isn't, since Kolosia is a deity people don't usually welcome, and has been rejected by the public for being associated with lies and trickery. He then looks straight at our guy and asks how strong he is, catching everyone off guard. He admits that he has no clue where he stands rank-wise, since it hasn't even been that long since he left the snowy wilderness. Curiosity gets the better of him, so he asks what kind of level a skeleton knight actually sits at. The cleric answers that someone must reach second rate just to face one and only. A first-rate warrior could take one down the way he did before they can dive deeper into the topic. The cafe owner approaches their table with a nervous look and politely asks them to wrap things up. Since the shop's closing, the man looks ready to pass out, but Cattle responds with the softest apology possible and quietly heads out with his party. Later, he turns to ask if the others have any plans lined up, but the moment the words leave his mouth, they all blurt out that they do, and that they're super busy. Cattle thinks it's unfortunate, but doesn't make a fuss. He parts ways with the group and says he hopes to run into them again someday. The others just stare at him with that frozen, blank look people wear when they're desperate for an escape. The day winds down, and our guy eventually finds a place to stay that's comfortable enough to make him forget how rough things were in the past. He settles in a bed and realizes that this is the first time he has even touched a bed. Since he arrived here, he finds it comforting that the loot from the dungeon was enough to pay for a proper room, since the comfort feels like paradise after all that snowfield chaos. He starts thinking about what lies ahead, now that he's finally made it into civilization, and sighs wishing to visit places, like the sacred grounds of the elves, the magic tower, or even the royal capital. Thoughts like these float around, until sleep gently pulls him under. The following morning, a knock on the door jolts him awake. He quickly wipes away the drool from his mouth, and drags himself up when he opens the door. The captain of the guard stands tall in front of him. Cattle rubs his eyes and asks what's going on, and the captain calmly informs him that the Lord wishes to meet him. Face to face hearing that, Cattle lights up at the idea of meeting the ruler of the land, and flashes an innocent smile, before agreeing without a hint of hesitation. Still standing half-naked by the door, he tells the captain to hang tight, while he grabs some clothes. The man stares in disbelief, not because the barbarian agreed, because he did it so easily, like it was the most normal thing ever. The scene shifts to a bustling street, in the Lord's domain where the bright daylight finally lets Cattle take in the scenery. He finds himself stunned by how pretty the city looks, compared to the shadowy version he stumbled into last night. As he takes in the streets, colors and buildings, he quietly thinks to himself that he really lucked out with this place. Meanwhile, the captain walks a little ahead, visibly stressed as he wonders what the barbarian might be doing behind him. He decides not to check, and just wishes they could reach the mansion before anything weird happens. At the gates, the captain announces their arrival to Lord Barkin, who then welcomes them inside, and stretches out a hand for a greeting. He introduces himself with calm authority, and Cattle politely responds with a handshake, and even bows his head while stating his name. This leaves the Lord visibly stunned, since barbarians rarely bow, and he wonders if he has finally lived long enough to witness every possible anomaly under the sun. He compliments Cattle's manners, and gestures for him to take a seat. Cattle looks around the room with eyes full of curiosity, and finds himself impressed by the castle's design. It reminds him of the medieval architecture from Earth. But then his gaze soon lands on the knight, standing beside the Lord, and his face lights up with nostalgia at the familiar armor style, which reminds him of RPG characters he once controlled in video games. Back home, however, the knight picks up the stare and misreads it entirely. He senses something dangerous, and assumes. The barbarian's eyes burn with murderous intent. The knight tenses and his hand inches toward his blade, prepared to neutralize the threat before it can act. Before the tension escalates, Lord Barkin clears his throat and calmly explains that the purpose of this meeting is to confirm a few details. About Cattle, our boy nods without complaint, and the Lord begins by asking where he comes from. Tall, with a small shrug, remarks that it sounds like a question. That means a lot to the Lord, and answers that he hails from the coldest place known to man, that is a snow-covered wasteland. His answer leaves both the knight and the Lord speechless. They exchange shocked glances as they realize that Cattle might really be the legendary barbarian whispered about in tales. The Lord admits that the story sounds unbelievable. The kettle tells him it was a nasty place to survive in, and whether the Lord believes it or not is entirely his choice rather than push further. Lord Barkin shifts the conversation and asks the question that has been sitting heavy on his mind, which is just how powerful this barbarian really is. Cattle chuckles at the wording and says that the question makes no sense, since even he has no clue what his limits are. After hearing this, the Lord and his knight share another loaded glance, and without skipping a beat, the Lord suggests a sparring match between Cattle and his knight. To find out the answer, he also throws in a handsome reward, while our guy tries to fully process what's going on. Right now, meanwhile, the Lord clearly sets the ground rules, that it's not supposed to be a fight to death, and hopes the barbarian can actually respect those rules, to which our hero gladly agrees without hesitation. The Lord and the knight quietly stare, as Cattle gets visibly excited at the idea of facing a fantasy world knight, blessed with mystical powers, and seeing that power firsthand. But to them it clearly appears that this barbarian can't seem to contain his wild love for battle, no matter how polite or humble he pretends to act, which unnerves them both on some level. Finally, the long-awaited moment of truth arrives, and the sparring match is held inside an arena, where both contestants now stand face to face. Like rivals, the Lord silently hopes that no blood gets spilled, and officially starts off the match by ringing a shiny bronze bell. Meanwhile, the knight tells Cattle that he should consider it an honor to witness such refined swordsmanship. Cattle agrees and looks calm, but the knight feels that it's an insult for a lowly barbarian to stand so relaxed in front of him, like that he gets into position without wasting time, and lunges forward in order to show cattle the massive strength difference between them. And as he prepares to thrust his blade, it suddenly shifts into 3, which takes our boy completely by surprise. The triple blades make him question if it's an illusion at first, but it becomes obvious pretty quickly that all 3 swords are completely real. While our boy dodges each and every strike, he wonders if this flashy move even counts as swordsmanship, and the knight figures that our boy must be just strong enough to barely avoid the attacks, which seems impressive. So he decides to wrap it up with a final all-out strike. But right then, our boy lifts his fist and flicks the sword, which shatters it into pieces, along with the knight's pride. He then reaches for the knight and grabs his armor, like it's just a piece of old cloth, before tossing him across the arena without any effort, which makes Lord Balcone sweat bullets. Once the match ends, the Lord stares in disbelief, as his finest warrior gets wiped out in one blow. Shaken by the terrifying strength the barbarian has just displayed, our boy casually turns toward the Lord and asks if he's done, and the Lord fumbles for words as he tries to process the scene before his eyes. He estimates that anyone who can flatten a top-level knight like this must be superhuman. At the very least, though, he still has no clear way to measure the real scope of his power. That fact alone puts him even more on edge, since an unpredictable force like this could break the fragile balance of the world. After a moment, the Lord decides to report this matter to the person known as the Swordmaster, and thinks that he should be arriving at the mansion any moment now, as he hopes this event is interesting enough to catch the Swordmaster's attention. A familiar voice calls out from beside him. He turns his head and finds the old Swordmaster already standing there, which makes him sigh as he mutters that the old man's creepy hobbies still haven't changed Swordmaster. Kane lets out a chuckle and remarks that even someone like him needs a little fun now and then, before getting straight to the point and asking about the matter that dragged him here. Lord Balkan rises to greet him properly and says that it's truly an honor to be visited by someone like old Master Kane on such short notice. Meanwhile, as the knight lies groaning in his bed, the door swings open and Lord Balkan walks in to surprise him with an unannounced visit. The Lord asks about his condition, and the knight immediately scrambles up and stammers that he should recover in a few days and apologizes for losing. But then Lord Kane steps in and tells the knight that his apology should be directed toward him instead, since the fool of a student managed to lose against some random barbarian. The master takes a glance at his condition and notices that, even though the armor got wrecked beyond repair, there's not a single injury on his body. He wouldn't have felt shocked, even if the knight had died. Yet here he is with nothing more than tattered clothes, which leads him to conclude that the barbarian held back on purpose. Master Kane shares his analysis with them and says that their opponent was not just a brawny brute, but someone capable of controlling his power with remarkable precision. He adds that the man far surpasses the level of an ordinary knight, to the point where mercy comes easy, which makes him sure that the guy must at least be operating on a superhuman level. This sends both Lord Balkan and the knight into stunned silence, and Lord Balkan clears his throat before asking what level of strength the barbarian has when compared to the Swordmaster. Kane replies with confidence that even if the barbarian qualifies as superhuman, he still cannot compete with the might of a true Swordmaster. Lord Balkan breaks into a nervous sweat while nodding along as the master continues his breakdown, noting that the barbarian never used aura, which normally should be impossible. He wonders whether this could be the true potential of the infamous Giant Barbarian and begins recalling how he once laughed off the ancient tales. But now that the man supposedly came from the White Steppes, he starts to think the legends might have some truth to them. He questions whether this creature is even human at all, or just another beast from that cursed land, but then reminds himself that if he truly were a monster, he wouldn't have shown mercy to a helpless human knight. Even after all this thinking, the mystery remains about why someone from that frozen wasteland would suddenly appear right now. Lord Balkan watches the master silently sink into thought and grows uneasy, so he asks if everything is all right. The master brushes it off and says the concern belongs to another time, before throwing in a quick comment about how the emperor keeps asking for the most absurd things. He tells the Lord to stop worrying for now and asks whether the barbarian still remains within his domain, which the Lord confirms, and the master scoffs that he will see it for himself. Meanwhile, back at Lord Balkan's mansion, The captain inquires about our protagonist's next moves, but our boy is not sure yet. A little while ago, the captain had already given him his reward for the duel, and the Lord had personally granted him permission to do whatever he pleased within the domain without any interference. Our boy figures that, while he doesn't have any solid plans, it would be seriously nice if they could give him a way to identify himself, so he doesn't have to complete a dungeon every single time he enters a new domain. Hearing that the captain of the night guard explains, there are two ways a person like him can handle that. He can either get a sponsor from someone with high status, or he can join the mercenaries for that second option. However, he would need to build a really strong track record at the mercenary guild, since most of them are just a bunch of errand runners. So it would probably be a lot smarter for a legend like Cattle to find a high-ranking sponsor. But our boy blushes the moment he hears that there is a mercenary guild, because in his mind, they are the cool kind of adventurers who hunt monsters to make a living, just like in his dream fantasy. He grins and asks the captain where he can become a mercenary, and the man awkwardly replies that he should go to the guild, the face of a man in love. Our boy asks him politely to lead the way. You see, the mercenaries in this world are a bunch of nomads who roam the earth and take on any request they can find, a lifestyle some people find romantic. However, most consider them the bottom-tier scum of society, because they are sent as cannon fodder to deal with dirty work, like defeating dangerous threats. This sometimes costs these poor people their lives, while they're just trying to make a living. Later, at the mercenary guild, a merc slaps another one in a fit of rage for making a fool of him. The other guy gets just as angry and tells the scumbag to bring it on. At the same time, the other mercs watch them like it's a wrestling match, and even place bets on who will win, while the madmen fight each other for no reason. A pink-haired guild lady asks her friend Rosa what she thinks about the new recruits. Her blonde friend looks like she wants to shoot herself before the night ends, as she replies that they're all a bunch of weirdos. The first one is a crazy man who claims he is a paladin, even though he has no powers. Then there's a thief who should be an NPC in Sekiro. And the third is a priestess, who is actually the most normal one. But no one trusts her because of the lord she serves. Hearing the disappointing description, the pink-haired lady is left completely speechless. Meanwhile, Rosa sighs deeply and feels genuinely annoyed that she has to spend the entire day at her dead end job watching brain-dead monkeys pick pointless fights with each other. She wishes a handsome knight in shining armor would suddenly appear and carry her away from her mind-numbing desk job. Right as she's having that thought, the door dramatically opens, and she quickly snaps back into professional guild girl mode with the aura of a certified Chad. Our boy makes a grand entrance into the guild. All the fighting monkeys in the room suddenly stop, dead in their tracks as they realize the Giant Barbarian has just stepped inside. The other marks also gawk with their jaws hanging, which makes Cattle wonder if he just did something strange after that. He makes his way to the counter, and the guild girl starts shaking like a vibration motor as she cautiously asks about his motives. For becoming a mercenary, she is extra careful, because she really doesn't want to accidentally offend him. Hearing her question, he tells her he has a ton of reasons, but the one at the very top of his list is to make a big name for himself. And she inquires if he is willing to rack up all the achievements it takes to gain status as a merc. Cattle confirms, so she asks him for 5 coppers, along with his name and age, for the registration process. Our boy gives his name, but he honestly doesn't know his own age, so she says she can put down whatever she thinks makes sense to finish his registration. Then she hands him over the shiny new badge that officially represents his status as a mercenary, so he should not lose it. Staring at the simple bronze badge, our boy instantly cheers up and then asks her if there are any requests available, and his strange excitement for work surprises her. After that, she presents all the requests he can take. As a new recruit in Cattle is shocked to see the tiny list of pathetic jobs an F-rank mercenary is allowed. Seeing his expression, Rosa sweats bullets, because she heard barbarians are a seriously proud race, and he might take out his anger on her. Full of hesitation, she shyly tells him he can take better jobs once he builds up a good track record. But surprisingly, he is quick to choose one. He points to the herb gathering request, and Rosa confirms if he is sure that he is fine with it. Keto confirms and asks her for more information on where he needs to pick up the herbs. So the guild lady takes out a picture of the red plant and tells him they are right outside the village. Seeing that, our boy cheerfully gets up and says he is on it, and heads out, leaving her completely surprised by the sheer level of chill vibes he is radiating. After he walks out the door, Rosa just sits there in sheer confusion, while our friend walks over, shaking from head to toe. The scene then shifts to the forest, just outside a nearby village, where cattle find a spot absolutely full of the herbs. He quickly takes off his clothes, puts on a straw hat to protect him from the heat, and gathers those herbs like a pro. After only an hour, he returns to the guild, and slams a big sack full of herbs right on the table, for Rosa to check with his innocent smile. He asks her if he got enough, and she confirms it all while wondering if he just destroyed an entire herb field. However, she is quite amazed by the perfect condition. He brought them back in, because most other mercs are rough, and rip them out of the ground like total savages, which brings their value way down. Watching her surprise cattle, acts incredibly proud about how good he is with his fingers, which makes Rosa slightly uncomfortable. Regardless, she serves him a tray, with a single silver coin inside as his reward, which is merely enough to buy the cheapest meal money can get. A simple piece of bread still. The feeling of earning that money, with hard work and sweat in the fields, brings an oddly wholesome sense of satisfaction to him. With that, he shoots out of his chair and asks her to give him the next job, as soon as possible, completely stunned. Rosa still can't believe the barbarian is happy with his reward, and he surprises her even more by saying he wants to do as much work as he can, while the sun is still up. The poor guild girl just cries at the handsome new recruit also turned out to be a weirdo, just like the rest of them. It does not take long before the barbarian hero wraps up a bunch of quests and signs up for the third cleaning request in a row, which makes the receptionist suspect that he might be some kind of obsessive clean freak. She asks him to confirm the quest, and he cheerfully heads off toward the warehouse, completely thrilled about the new mission. Once there, he surprises a lady by saying he came to clean the place, and politely asks if she owns the warehouse, but she confirms with a nod. He finishes the job in no time, since lifting heavy stuff barely counts as a challenge for someone like him. His next stop takes him to the streets, where he picks up a broom and sweeps with such enthusiasm that it kicks up more dust than expected, although he quickly learns to control his strength without much struggle. Meanwhile, Master Kane continues watching him from afar through a pair of binoculars, while hiding in a hilariously suspicious second-hand disguise. He squints and tries to figure out what exactly the barbarian is up to, because in his mind, someone with strength that could topple empires should not waste time on trivial chores when he could live like royalty if he just revealed who he truly is. Yet the more he watches, the more he notices that the barbarian is not just doing the jobs to pass time, but actually seems to enjoy them and puts in genuine effort, which leaves the master deeply puzzled about why this warrior comes off more like a gentle giant than a ruthless beast. Later that day, after completing a marathon of tasks, our boy arrives at the guild, and a receptionist hands him a coin pouch as a reward for clearing 15 different quests in one day. His reward totals 15 silver coins, and he accepts it with such delight that his face lights up as he tells her that he will be back again tomorrow. While he strolls through town, little kids burst into tears at the sight of him, and grown UPS stare with judgment that could melt stone. But he just minds his business and cheerfully heads toward the local library. As he walks in, the librarian greets him with a hesitant smile, but freezes when the guy's massive figure enters her space. He politely asks if it is all right for him to read a few books, and when she agrees, he grabs a small pile and quietly starts flipping through them. The librarian peeks over in shock, and even the swordmaster, watching from outside, cannot believe his eyes when he sees a barbarian who is supposed to lack any education reading with such focus. He wonders if the Snowfield tribes have a completely different upbringing compared to the rest of the world's barbarians, or if the specific one is just a rare exception. After finishing a thick book on history, our boy closes it and reflects that the Empire came out victorious against the kingdom in a war. He remembers that a few years ago, Milena visited the Snowfields to deliver and sell weapons to the kingdom. But even then, the Empire pulled off a win, and now the former kingdom stands as nothing more than a vassal. Under the Empire's rule, after the Empire's victory, its influence grows to the point where it swallows nearly half of the human world, and it keeps expanding its reach, like it plans to eventually consume the whole planet. Once our boy finishes reading about all the empires and their thirst for world domination, he shifts his attention from boring old humans to the non-human side of things, and picks up another book just to explore what kind of fantastical beings exist in this wild new world he now lives in. He reads about a massive dwarven cave called Mantamia, said to be overflowing with rare ores that glitter like treasure, and then about a fairy village named Pisarapia, which sounds like something straight out of a dream. The next part introduces him to floating cities in the sky, known as Lagamiria, homes of celestial beings. And finally, the hidden elven sanctuary called Elfo Segredo, a place so elusive that even the strongest rulers in history have failed to uncover its exact location. Cattle chuckles and guesses that if anyone is ever getting into that elven sanctuary, it might as well be him. But right when he feels confident, he stumbles across another topic in the book that catches him off guard. Apparently there are places just as extreme as the snowfield he crawled out from. They're called demon zones. And these are areas where humans are absolutely not welcome. The creatures in those places do not follow the same rules and look nothing like regular monsters. The world has only 5 demon zones, but each one stretches across massive lands and sounds more unhinged than the last. He reads about the silent forest, where everything gets swallowed up in absolute stillness. Then the abyss that pulls everything into evil. The deep sea, where weird aquatic primates breathe like humans. The hollow pit where nothing lives, and even nothingness itself creeps you out. And of course, the snowfield, the same one that our boy calls home. Inside these regions, terrifying monsters known as aberrations live and thrive. But the book mentions that they cannot pass into the human world, which makes Cattle pause and wonder just how ridiculously big this world is supposed to be. He recalls how enormous the snowfield was, and finds it insane that there are multiple places out there, just like it. After soaking up all this new knowledge, he stands up with a sense of gratitude and politely thanks the librarian, who quietly nods and nervously accepts his appreciation. Without saying much else, our hero strolls back to the guild and walks up to receptionist Rosa with the same casual energy and asks if any new quests are available for the day. She presents a few fresh request forms, and as Cattle flips through them far away from the guild, Master Kane finishes observing and finally concludes that the time has come for a direct confrontation with the mysterious Giant Barbarian. At night, in the middle of the bustling city, he strolls back feeling fully satisfied after managing to complete over a dozen small requests in a single day. He's a little surprised at how all those tiny rewards stack up to a pretty decent amount overall. As he walks alone through a quiet street, under the dim moonlight, he thinks to himself that at this pace, becoming a world-famous mercenary is just around the corner. However, he remains blissfully unaware that a certain hooded mustache is already waiting for him just around the turn. Suddenly, the hooded geezer steps right into his path and locks him in with a sharp stare as the sword master stands there, trying to look all mysterious and cool. Our boy casually points out that he knows the old man has been tailing him all day, which leaves Master Kane visibly shaken. He asks what exactly the guy wants from him now. Master Kane is stunned into silence because in his mind, there is no way someone with ordinary senses could have noticed him, as he was confident his stealth had never failed him before, no matter how sharp the target. Just then he gets hit with another shock when my guy reaches for his weapon and wonders out loud if the old man is actually a bandit. When he gets no answer, he starts thinking it is kind of impressive that someone managed to sneak past city security, especially since the border security was tight. At this point, Master Kane wants to reveal that he is actually the sword master himself, but his lips refuse to move after taking such a hit to his pride and dignity. But the bullying does not stop there. Cattle says it is truly a shame that the economy has fallen so low that an elderly man with a shriveled up body has no choice but to turn to petty crime. His disappointment soon shifts into a smug grin, though, as he figures that catching a bandit who managed to sneak into town should definitely boost his aura at the mercenary guild without much effort. Although the sword master is not exactly thrilled with this misunderstanding, he thinks it might be a good opportunity if the barbarian will take him seriously as an enemy. That way he can test the guy's real strength without holding back. As our barbarian begins closing the distance, the old man can hardly believe what he's seeing. His opponent completely vanishes right before his eyes, without a trace. Before he can even fully register what just happened, our boy appears again mere inches from his face, and his massive hand stretches toward him. At lightning speed at the very last moment, though, the sword master jerks out of the way, and even Cattle is impressed by how smooth that dodge was for someone with 1 foot already in the grave. Master Kane nearly has a heart attack, realizing that if he had been even a millisecond slower, it would be game over for him. But the real shocker is that he did not sense a single drop of aura coming from Cattle, while the barbarian flashes a genuine smile and appreciates the old man's skills. Master Kane starts wondering if that move was really pulled off, with nothing but pure physical strength. Just then, he puts on a serious expression and goes all in. Like Okaru when he's mad, however, his momentum stalls almost instantly when the guy vanishes again and reappears behind him, grabbing his shoulder, hard enough to almost dislocate something. The sword master is taken aback once again, realizing he could not pick up even a trace of movement. With heightened senses from his skill, next our guy puts him in an arm lock, and Master Kane struggles with everything he has, but fails to break free at first. Realizing that this is turning into a contest of raw physical strength, the sword master unleashes all of his energy and starts pushing back with full force. As soon as he feels that surge of power, our boy is genuinely impressed, and Master Kane finally manages to break out of the hold. The geezer looks proud for a second, like he proved himself, but Cattle ruins his mood by saying that bandits nowadays know some surprisingly advanced techniques. He notices that the old man has mana flowing through his whole body, something that only first-rate elites are supposed to be capable of, which makes it even stranger that someone this strong would pose as a lowly bandit. Meanwhile, Master Kane wonders what the clueless dunce is made of, because the mana manifested around his body should easily tear through any regular human, just from the slightest touch. Yet this barbarian is completely unscathed. After that, Cattle lets the old man know that he has no clue what kind of technique he is using. But Playtime is overhearing that. The sword master instinctively reaches for his weapon, but before he can even unsheath it, the Giant Barbarian calmly slides the blade back into its scabbard. The sheer humiliation of a man great as himself infuriates Kane, so he strains as hard as he can to get it out, but it is no match for Cattle's girthy finger. Then as he watches that massive hand inching slowly closer toward him, the sword master finally comes to terms with the fact that his time is up with that. The barbarian hoists him up over his shoulder, impressed that this is what counts as a bandit in this fantasy world at the guard tower. The captain is absolutely shocked to see the Giant Barbarian casually dragging Master Kane along, like some kind of pet at first. The man assumes that Cattle must have attacked the sword master, but when our boy cheerfully says he would like to report bandit, the captain's jaw nearly drops straight through the basement. In disbelief, with a radiant smile on his face, he asks the captain if his mercenary standing will go up now that he has caught a bandit. After barely calming down, the captain wonders how it is even remotely possible that a man who once transcended human limitations was captured by a barbarian and brought here like a stray dog that had already been put down. After taking a breath, the captain firmly assures him that the person he brought in is not a bandit. So naturally, our big brain barbarian concludes that the guard must be an accomplice of the real bandit instead. Bowing slightly, the guard states that the old man is actually the highly esteemed sword master of the Gahindra kingdom. But Cattle seriously doubts that claim with all his heart. Then, with a perfectly straight face, he insists that the senile bandit attacked him just to get his wrinkly hands on his silver coins. But the guard swears up and down that there is no chance he would ever mistake the sword master's face. When Cattle suggests that the man might be using some sneaky illusion, magic to disguise himself, the captain says someone so skilled with magic would also deserve a title, making our boy quietly wonder if sword master is a fancy nickname given to just anyone tired of listening to the brain-dead barbarian spewing nonsense. The knight captain confirms one last time that it really is the sword master, and then says he will report everything to his lord. Over at the mansion, Lord Barkin is flabbergasted when he hears that Master Kane got his cheeks handed to him by a barbarian. A few hours later, Cattle is summoned too, and there he politely apologizes to Master Kane, who also ends up apologizing for the unfortunate misunderstanding. A heavy moment of silence follows between the two, while Lord Barkin and the knight captain stand stunned that the sword master has lost a duel for the first time in history. That fact alone means the Giant Barbarian is stronger than one of the kingdom's most elite warriors. Although Master Kane only recently became superhuman and is a bottom-tier master, the fact that Cattle could easily defeat even the weakest sword master makes him a monster on two legs. Just thinking about that gives Lord Barker a headache. So he excuses himself after telling the two men to settle things between themselves. With the others out of the room, Master Kane and our boy quietly stare at one another, since the old man simply cannot bring himself to admit that he got hooped with surgical precision and had his pride shattered to bits. Eventually, he gathers himself and formally introduces his full name as Swordmaster Kane, which makes our boy pause and curiously ask if Swordmaster is actually part of his name. But Kane explains that it is a noble rank and not something he was born with. He then asks if that cool technique he saw earlier was some kind of Swordmaster power. And when Lord Kane manifests arcane energy around his hand, our boy jumps out of his chair in pure excitement. The first time he saw it, Cattle had dismissed it as some cheap bandit trick. But now that he knows it is an ability of Swordmasters, he is enchanted by its coolness. Lord Kane tells him that what he is seeing is aura, the physical manifestation of arcane energy. Remembering how insanely cool the glowing aura made the senile master look, Cattle lights up and immediately asks how he can use it. To put it simply, Lord Kane says aura is a manifestation of arcane power. And when Cattle asks if it is like mana, the man explains that arcane is actually the root force. That becomes aura for swordsmen, and mana for mages, the mysterious power, immediately piques our boy's interest. So he eagerly asks the man to teach him, even if it is kind of embarrassing to admit. He has no background in it, seeing how dead serious he is about learning it. Lord Kane asks why someone, already stronger than a swordmaster, would even need his techniques. Cattle explains he lacks any fighting techniques, and only knows how to go on Gabunga and swing around his weapon. Right now, hearing that makes the swordmaster feel just a little bit better, thinking maybe he only lost because he never got the chance to draw the very weapon he has mastered. Wanting to restore both his dignity and reputation, Lord Kane decides to reclaim some of his honor by educating the barbarian. With that thought, Lord Kane agrees to teach him and declares that he is only half a man, without his sword in response. Cattle nods as if that makes sense. That Lord Kane was so pathetic because he never got to actually use his sword in their fight, leaving the old man slightly shocked by his blunt honesty. Then our boy says it would be pretty sad if the kingdom handed out sword master titles to people this week, which pisses Kane off even more. But he softens the blow by admitting that Master Kane probably could have won the fight if he used his blade, and hearing that brings back just a sliver of the old man's self-respect. Back in the human world, Cattle had taken up swordsmanship with some seriousness. Yet even then, he soon came to realize that everything he had learned there was meaningless when compared to the swordplay in this new realm, one deeply rooted in manipulating arcane energy. As the scene shifts, the training arc is already underway, with Lord Kane gripping his sword firmly, as he speaks about how the core of his style lies in the balance between reality and illusion. And then he turns to Cattle and asks what exactly he witnessed when he faced his disciple. Cattle remembers the guy he had defeated earlier, and with a bit of confusion, asks if that man really was Lord Kane's student. He explains how the man's sword seemed to split into 3 separate strikes, all of which turn out to be real and not just tricks. With that, Cattle begins to understand what this concept of embodiment truly means, and directly asks the old man whether swordsmanship here relies purely on technique, rather than raw strength. The old geezer responds by drawing out his sword, which now gleams with a faint green aura that instantly catches Cattle's eye. Still, the old man grumbles about how unbelievable it feels to pass on such a refined art to a mere barbarian. To demonstrate, he slams his blade into the ground, and the floor splits open, while his strike divides neatly into 5 precise attacks. The old man then launches into a vague explanation about how various techniques coexist and evolve, but Cattle doesn't pay much attention to all that, and instead says that he thinks he might be able to copy the skill. The old swordsman, clearly annoyed, scoffs at the idea, claiming it's nonsense, and refusing to believe that someone could mimic something he spent his entire life trying to master. However, Cattle decides to go for it and swings his axe without hesitation. To everyone's shock, the attack really does split into 5 parts. The old man stands frozen, with his jaw nearly touching the floor, unable to process what he has just seen. When Cattle asks if the technique was accurate, the old master admits that while it looked convincing, the barbarian had only used speed to fake the effect, rather than truly replicate the skill. The old geezer nearly gets fooled for a brief moment, but then finally regains his composure and tells the barbarian that there was no real technique behind that strike. Cattle calmly responds, saying that since swordsmanship is meant for real combat, shouldn't the end result matter more than the method used to get there? The old man begins to grow uneasy and the weight of Cattle's words starts sinking in, until he actually sheds a few quiet tears, hurt by the realization that what the barbarian said might be true. Lord Cain refuses to be looked down on so easily, and to prove himself, he performs another move, where his entire body appears to separate. He then proudly declares that the technique is called bodily separation and that it can only be achieved through absolute mastery of aura. Next, he turns to Cattle and directly challenges him, asking if he can copy this technique too. Without hesitation, the barbarian steps forward, and by moving at extreme speed, he fakes the effect once more, making it appear as if his body has truly split. The force of his attack tears off the roof, and even stirs up a powerful whirlwind. Standing tall, the Giant Barbarian asks with confidence if that was the correct form. The old man, now unable to keep it together, drops to his knees with tears in his eyes. He simply cannot accept that someone like Cattle could mimic the techniques he had spent an entire lifetime refining. Cattle turns to him and says that for someone with such a stern appearance, he really does get emotional too easily. Then, trying to lift the mood, Cattle tells him that his swordsmanship is actually quite impressive, and even admits that he had only swung his axe at full speed, saying it wasn't real swordsmanship at all. This little praise is more than enough to lift the old master's spirits, and soon he falls into a spiral of self-satisfaction, proudly thinking that only he, in the entire world, could ever truly embody both illusion and reality. Clutching his fist and whispering to himself, he insists that there is absolutely nothing wrong with his technique, and that the real issue lies in the fact that the barbarian is just an absolute madman. Catalan brings up a calm request, asking the old man if he might truly teach him the deeper meaning behind the technique. The old geezer, still feeling the weight of his earlier emotions, offers an apology for letting himself slip like that, and soon after his tone turns more focused. He explains that the first step on this path would be learning how to control the aura, and for that to happen, one must first begin to comprehend the arcane in its true sense at that moment. Lord Cain adds that reaching the higher realms of mastery is something no one can accomplish without awakening the arcane, except for a rare few, who carry blessings directly from the divine. Curious Cattle asks whether this divine power exists as something entirely separate, and Master Cain responds by saying that the divine gift is something granted by the gods, and holds no connection to a person's own skill or effort. He continues without pause, speaking about the arcane as a hidden force, resting deep within each individual, and claims it to be the origin point from which all other abilities are born. Then he begins to describe the 5 stages of arcane mastery, with the very first of them being nothing more than the simple act of sensing its presence. Cattle wonders aloud whether every person is actually capable of doing that. The old man answers with a quiet denial, explaining that only those who are able to feel it truly fall into what he calls the 3rd class. As he goes on about the 5 stages, Atal finds himself recalling something Milena once mentioned, and it starts to make sense. The old man then remarks that this structure is only a convenient way of understanding things, and that the borders between classes are never as clean as they seem. After that, the two of them finally begin with the 1st stage, known as arcane perception. After closing his eyes, Master Cain calmly tells him to try feeling everything around him, because awakening the perception of the arcane means pushing every one of your senses to the max. He explains it is like noticing the wind on your skin, then sensing something else, like a second presence, but after just a few seconds. Cattle flat out says he feels absolutely nothing at all. Mildly shocked, Master Cain did not expect him to give up that fast, and admits he assumed someone with Cattle's level of strength might not be able to pick it up so easily. After all, it is pretty common for warriors, without any magical training, to slowly gain arcane perception over time, which makes this barbarian an unusual exception. Master Cain then guesses it could be one of those strange quirks caused by the White Wasteland, and Cattle recalls that none of the other barbarians he knew had any idea what this arcane stuff is. After hearing that, Master Cain nods and explains that sensing the arcane is far from easy, which is why he offers to channel a bit of energy into him and unlock his path by brute force, even though he still doesn't understand a single thing the old man just said. Cattle feels excited once he realizes Master Cain is about to transfer some of his aura with the soul of a true aura. Farmer Tall is hyped, as he says he is more than ready for whatever comes next. He sits down with high expectations, while the Swordmaster tells him to let go of all tension and focus completely on what is happening inside his body. After that, Master Kane places a steady hand on his back and begins channeling aura, but he freezes for a second when he senses what is actually going on. Inside this guy, he starts questioning whether the Ashen Barbarian is even human, because his insides feel more solid than the rock, and his muscle density is so absurd. It might as well be a black hole. Still confused why nothing is happening, Cattle turns his head around and asks what the holdup is, and the old man admits that he was lost in thought. However, Master Kane quickly realizes that he simply cannot reach Cattle's arcane core. No matter how far he pushes his aura, it feels like he's being pulled deeper and deeper into some never-ending abyss that keeps crushing him with its raw pressure. Eventually, he admits that this method will not work at all. Hearing that, Cattle's disappointment is immeasurable, and his day is ruined. He stares in confusion and frustration, asking if it is just not possible, because he has zero talent for magic. But Master Kane firmly clarifies that simply channeling aura into him is not enough to draw out the arcane from someone. So the only remaining option is for people like him to awaken it on their own. The problem is, though, that he could not even find a trace of arcane anywhere in the Cattle's entire body. Baffled, our boy asks if that means he just does not have the power in him at all. And Master Kane explains that he simply could not confirm anything because Cattle's body is far from normal. The Sword Master explains that his aura needs to pass through the body smoothly, but Cattle's build is so absurdly solid that his aura cannot travel far enough inside. After realizing that even a top-tier Sword Master like this guy cannot help him, he pouts like a kid and mutters that this means he will never get to use that cool, mysterious power. In response, Master Kane tells him that he cannot say for sure whether there is a path or not, so he might just need to find a Sword Master with a stronger aura, or try his luck at the Mage Tower instead. Though, he sincerely apologizes for not being able to help more. Cattle just brushes it off and says it is totally fine, since there is still a sliver of hope left. After that, he thanks the senile swordsman for everything he taught him, and Master Kane stands there a bit stunned, because every barbarian he had met until now was just a violent, brain-dead beast with no place in civilized society. Knowing Cattle is different from the rest, Master Kane asks if he would ever consider joining their kingdom, meaning whether he would pledge loyalty to the king and gain noble status in return. Master Kane says he would easily rise through the ranks because of how powerful he is, and offers to sponsor him personally. Still, our hero turns down the tempting offer because he lives on the road and has no plans to settle down in one place. That makes the Sword Master a little disappointed, because Cattle's raw power would make a big difference to the Empire's control. Master Kane presses again, asking if Cattle really has no interest in this once-in-a-lifetime chance to become nobility. But the barbarian makes it clear he is a freedom-loving American who bows to no one hearing that. The Sword Master goes speechless, and Cattle thanks him once more before heading out, grateful for everything Master Kane has taught him so far. Later, as the old man walks alone through the halls, he reflects on how foolish it was to think someone like Cattle could ever be controlled. The fact that he acts on his own free will just makes him even more dangerous than the other demons from the snowfields. Sighing in frustration, Master Kane quietly wonders what the Emperor is even thinking by trying to conquer the demon realm. Of all places, back in Luke Barkin's chambers, the Lord asks if Master Kane is certain that the Emperor intends to take over the demon lands, and the Sword Master confirms it, saying the Emperor is practically sending people to their deaths under the excuse of gathering information. That alone raises real suspicions. He might be a reincarnation of one of the former mad emperors, since the Empire has not even managed to fully conquer the human realm. Yet Master Kane warns that the time may be approaching when they get summoned. He also informs the Lord that while not confirmed, there are more and more reports that dungeon outbreaks are getting worse, likely due to the blight spreading from the demon realm. Whatever the cause may be, humanity is going to suffer the most. And then Master Kane brings up the final issue, the biggest anomaly to escape. The wasteland is now roaming free. With all that said, he asks the Lord what he thinks. And even though Lord Barkin believes Cattle is not their enemy, he quietly says that only time will tell what path the Ashen Barbarian will choose. After giving the Sword Master a humiliating existential crisis, a new day rose, and Cattle is back to exploring the Varkan territory like a happy wanderer. Now he's starting to notice that wherever he goes, Children cry and cling to their mamas. Even grown men would try their darndest to stay out of his way. He wondered if these extreme reactions were due to his primitive clothes, instead of his monstrous frame built for the NBA. He's wearing a beast-hide vest, which doesn't exactly scream civilized, especially to normal folks. For today's mission, it's time to finally get some civilized clothing. The first store he visited was quite high-end. All sorts of colorful fabrics and garments were laid out neatly. When a manager saw what kind of hulking beast had just walked into his store, he almost passed out in fright. How would you feel if a barbarian towered over you, demanding some new drip on the brink of tears? The manager regrettably relayed that they don't have anything giant-sized, but if he's willing to wait, they could certainly make a custom order with perfectly tailored dimensions. That cheered Cattle up. He excitedly placed an order. The manager took his contact information and promised to notify him when it's ready. This poor guy feared that if they delivered clothes that didn't meet the barbarian's tastes, this business and his life would be done for. After getting measured and finalizing the order, Tall left to make his way back to the guild hall. On the way, he came across a curious blue gem, sitting on the roadside. Curious. He picked it up, he examined the gemstone closer, and was mesmerized by its luster. Atal innocently pocketed the shiny gem and made a note to ask the guild hall people about it. As always, he went straight to Rosa. The receptionist, the barbarian, handed her the gemstone and asked for any relevant information. Rosa gave it a brief examination and concluded that it's not a gemstone. The surface is way too smooth for something naturally occurring. It seems like it was carved by someone. There are no markings or names, so it's hard to say what it is. But as the humble receptionist continues to hold and stare into the blue orb, she starts getting lulled by its brilliance. Atal flicked his fingers and woke Rosa up from her daze. She was jolted back to reality, and he asked if she was all right. He had to interfere, as she looked dangerously entranced by the thing. It sounds like she didn't even notice the bizarre pull it had on her. Now Rosa could slightly feel the strange energy oozing out of the mysterious orb she offered to get it appraised by a professional. But Cattle preferred to investigate the thing himself. Doing side quests is part of the fun for him. Before leaving, he asked Rosa for the list of available jobs he could take on today. As always, it was a bunch of menial tasks like weed pulling, potato digging street, and sewer cleaning. The usual stuff. Other mercenaries would have scoffed at the list, but Cattle was just happy to do some novice jobs. He quickly blitzed through the list, got his rewards, and retired to his room after another fulfilling day. Before calling it a day, he pulled out the mysterious orb and pondered it for a moment. As far as he could tell, Rosa looked like she was losing her mind over it, in a hypnotic daze right then and there. He heard a disembodied voice beckoning to him from inside the orb. He was suddenly transported inside his mind. As the voice tried to lead him somewhere, it was practically showing him a map to follow. He reckoned this was some kind of domination magic. Since he has nothing to do on this fine night anyway, he decided to play along with the disembodied voice. He put his beast-hide vest back on and followed the directions. At this point, the voice was just being annoying. After wading through wild vines and traversing the outskirts of the city, he found a hidden cavern. He smiled with amusement as he freely entered the mall, with an unknown entity waiting on the other side. Unbeknownst to Cattle, he was being monitored. As soon as he entered the dingy cave, he was being eyed as just another sacrifice, a dumb barbarian big enough to make a good offering. The magical, skeletal freak on the other side of the surveillance is giddy at the thought of having his 10th sacrificial victim for the sake of resurrection. In the past, during a great warring period, many kingdoms fell into ruin. Behind all that destruction was an evil mage who manipulated and disturbed people's emotions. He controlled the minds of countless monarchs and ruled over their kingdoms. Eventually, however, his atrocities caught up with him. He crossed the line and was hunted down by the heroes. Before his downfall, he transferred his soul into a life vessel, becoming a lich. He became an undying soul tied to his vessel. The wickedly evil mage who once dominated the world had been biding his time planning his resurrection, since he needed many lives to sacrifice. In the name of revival, he eventually settled in a remote fief. He began spreading bewitching orbs and lured unwitting victims. All these innocent lives fueled the mana core needed for his true revival. Once he descends, he plans to conquer the world, using a great power stronger than ever. Countless years have passed, and his goal is steadily drawing closer to success. But he wondered why a barbarian would come to such a remote and quaint territory. This was supposed to be his quiet sacrifice farm. Creatures from the north don't usually leave their wretched nest. Nevertheless, with the barbarian size alone, he would surely make a fine offering. And the orb is enchanted with a special effect to lure those untouched by the arcane. This way, only ignorant and puny mortals would be affected. So the Lich felt confident that the barbarian, ensnared by his trap, was just another ordinary soul with no arcane sense. A simple brute. He continued, letting the barbarian follow the voice, eager to add another foundation for his glorious resurrection. Meanwhile, Cattle was just casually strolling in the dank hallways until he reached a wooden gate. He opened that old-ass door. He found the freaky skeleton mage, trying hard to aura farm, identifying that what stood before him was a real Lich. Cattle almost burst with excitement. From what Cattle knows, those freaks were once mages who had reached the extreme. They are the ultimate fantasy villains. The barbarian was nerding out, seeing as the brute didn't feel fear, or even a little bit of apprehension. The Lich felt a little uneasy. Now Cattle has an explanation, and a culprit for the orb's luring prowess. The Lich is starting to question his methods. He surely doesn't sense any arcane from the musclehead. This guy is supposed to be a normal barbarian. Then the only explanation must be some kind of mental protection artifact, and a high-end one at that. Something powerful enough to block the senses of a Lich. He praised the barbarian's luck for stumbling upon such a thing. When Cattle had no idea what he was talking about, the Lich waved his scepter and wrapped the loose skeletons around the crypt with mana while threatening to crush Cattle by force. He set his minions loose to swarm the living sacrifice. Cattle was just enjoying living. A classic fantasy game encounter. A dungeon showdown with an evil Lich. As soon as the first skeleton entered his range, he bitch slapped that pile of bones to the dirt. It was so forceful that it sent shivers down the summoner's spine as the skull cracked and fragmented. Cattle rated his slap a little flimsy, but yielded better results than he expected. His pride hurt. The Lich set his sights on Cattle's arms and legs. For the next wave, it doesn't matter if the sacrifice is crippled. He just has to be alive for the ceremony. The next batch of skeletons was a little fancier. They had swords that Tall scoffed, and sent a haymaker that shattered the first one's jaw. With another strike locked and loaded, he added another shattered skull to the count. The third one was felled by a brutal roundhouse kick. The fourth was sent back down to the ground with ease. Seeing his minions fall in such a devastating manner, one after another, the Lich was slack-jawed. Thankfully, Cattle had some experience dealing with these bony bastards. With his first dungeon run, destroying the head by sheer force is a very effective method. He was actually disappointed that the Lich didn't summon at least a Death Knight or something stronger. Hearing his lament really hurt the Lich's pride. Sack of Bones stammered that he wouldn't be playing nice anymore. He raised his scepter and made a peculiar summon rise, coating its body in full armor made of mana. It was a skeleton knight, and Cattle wasn't impressed. He already one shot at one of these not long ago. Then he tried to convince himself that maybe a skeleton knight made by a Lich would be different as soon as the kill order was raised. The skeleton knight spurred into action. Cattle squared his fist and prepared for impact. The sword was swung midway through the charge, and Cattle is about to do a little durability test. On the poor bastard, disinterest was painted in his face as he punched a hole through the skeleton knight's supposedly sturdy armor. Just like the first time, he had to deal with this kind of enemy. It was an absolute stomp. But unlike the last skeleton knight, he dumpstered. This one still had enough juice to demand a round two. Ketel was pleasantly surprised at the thing's toughness. The Lich was frantically juicing up the knight, opening his mana to the limit to sustain his summons. The bag of bones snarled at Ketel. Even though most of its joints had turned to dust, Ketel just stood there waiting for what the crippled skeleton knight had in store for him. He clenched his fist and perfectly timed a straightforward punch to the face. Once again, the knight was sent flying. Like a bony ragdoll, it crashed into the cavern walls. His bones mixed with the debris. The Lich could feel his dream of resurrection slipping through his finger bones. Cattle stepped forward, stepping through and crushing the loose bones scattered all around. Then he asked the Lich if that was all. He was completely underwhelmed by the supposed fantasy world's final boss. The Lich still can't sense an iota of arcane from the barbarian. If this were due to an artifact, there should at least be some mana leaks. He was forced to consider that the man in front of him was simply built different, an absolute monster, who could take down a skeleton knight with nothing but raw physical strength. In his countless years of existence, he had never seen something so absurd, deeming Cattle worthy The Lich prepared to take the barbarian on himself. He urged the man to consider an honor, to feel the wrath of a Lich. Directly the surrounding area darkened, and instead of feeling unnerved, Cattle was positively intrigued. He looked around and saw nothing but an endless void, stretching infinitely. Being trapped in this zone of terror shall be the price he pays for daring to trespass upon the sanctuary with blatant disrespect. He said that, as if he wasn't the one summoning innocent people, by using the orb as a lure. The Lich also realized the stupidity of his threats. Everyone who ended up here had been victims of the scattered orbs. Cattle was no exception. The prideful Lich threw a tantrum, declaring himself a great and mighty sorcerer, the mastermind who brought down 5 kingdoms, and clashed with ancient heroes. Cardos Branulus, Kessizatal, recalled the elf queen he encountered a few days ago. That girl also had a really long name. While he was busy thinking about long-ass names, the Lich was cooking up a spell to turn him into a cornerstone of resurrection. A dark energy shot out from the scepter and forced itself upon his line of sight. His vision spun as he fixated on the rotating dark power. This is a spell that controls human emotions. It draws out negative feelings and traps the victim. It renders them paralyzed and mentally broken. It is a unique spell developed by Cardos, a power that makes him nearly invincible, considering how little mana it consumes. He was certain that a mere barbarian, who couldn't even wield the arcane, would easily succumb to such great magic. Cardos was already thinking of what he should do next. Now that it looks like the brute is compromised, maybe he can capture this anomaly and study it a little bit. Before the sacrificial ceremony, Cardos resumed his skeletons to retrieve the dazed barbarian. When a lanky bag of bones tried to get close, Cattle sent the fool spinning into the stratosphere. Poor skeleton hit the cavern ceiling, its head crushed and pulverized upon contact. All signs of haze were gone from the barbarian's eyes, and the Lich was on the verge of crashing the fuck out. Every summons he tried ended up being bone meal for the cave's barren ground. He was sure that the mind control spell worked perfectly. Cattle was utterly unimpressed by all the tricks. Skeleton summoning is becoming a little repetitive. He sighed with boredom. His dream of having an epic battle turned out to be remarkably anticlimactic. With every word out of his mouth, the Lich's pride gets increasingly tattered. Cardos was under the impression that humans are creatures ruled by emotions. No matter how powerful they become, they all carry some form of heavy negativity, buried deep in their hearts. That's why he sees his emotion control magic as an immutable and irresistible weapon. While Cardos was questioning the branch of magic he had dedicated centuries to perfecting, Cattle was requesting some fireballs or magic missiles. Something flashy if there's one thing he loathes. It is his magic being compared to low-tier spells, fueled by hate for the unsuspecting barbarian. Cardo summoned a dark, murky current with neither form nor substance. This ultimate technique shall swallow the world and drown all clarity in chaos. That incredibly grandiose chant revived Cattle's hope of seeing something truly mythical. When the murky wave of darkness reached its zenith form, it was unleashed to consume everything in its path. Cattle stood like a curious kid as he watched the waves barrel towards his position. With his ultimate technique in full effect, the Lich laughed maniacally, expecting an inevitable victory. His early celebration was cut short when a black bile shot out of his mouth. He fell to his knees, severely weakened. Cardo severely overdid it with that last spell. He spent all his mana, except the bare minimum to keep his vessel together. Still, it is worth it, just to see that barbarian die a horrible death. Unfortunately for him, he overdrafted his mana for nothing. The Tall remained standing and praised the technique's power. Sure, he was a little impressed, but he wants more from the Lich. Even the strongest spell in Cardos' arsenal was proving useless against the strange barbarian. If a great hero were struck by that ultimate attack directly, their mind would have shattered into a million pieces. Cattle just felt a little tickle and nothing more. Seeing the Lich hobbling on his knees, Cattle drew his battle axe. He took all the little dark tricks head on. It's only fair that he gets his turn now. It was then that Cardos the Lich started deluding himself into thinking of yet another plausible reason for his headache. Cardos alleged that the barbarian willingly came to this cave, knowing who he was as usual. Cattle had no idea what the hell the bonehead was talking about. The Lich laughed like a maniac, praising the non-existent barbarian intelligence network. For tracking him down, Cardos vowed to rise again and shatter whatever blade may come and rule the world as he once had. He once heard that deep within the empire lies a human breeding ground of sorts, a place where only the best and unique talents are raised. He reckoned that this barbarian was the product of that facility. By his estimation, this man must have been bred, born and trained as a blade, forged solely to kill the immortal Lich, an assassin honed with the Empire's full effort. Even so, Cardos Branulus, Kessi shall prevail, kill the blade, meant to end him, and overturn the Empire once more. Hearing the nonsensical babble, Cattle worried that the underwhelming Lich might have lost his marbles. When all else failed, the soul of the ancient mage vacated his vessel and tried to force his way into Cattle's. He did so while thinking that entering the barbarian's body and devouring that simple mind from the inside would give him a new powerful vessel. This is his one and only option for survival, and the upsides are staggering. When his soul successfully swam into the unbreakable body, Cardos laid his claim on his new home. Cardos' soul eventually reached the barbarian's inner world, the Mind Palace. He felt that something was extremely wrong. He had never seen anything like it. The Lich was expecting to peer through memories of the barbarian, being carefully chiseled by the Empire. But seeing what Cattle truly is, Cardos conceded that even the Empire could never even begin to imagine someone like this man. He felt the remaining consciousness of his soul collapsing at an unstoppable rate. Arthos Branulus Kessis, the mighty Lich's final word, was one of utter confusion. Outside, Cattle didn't even understand what had just happened. All he saw was the Lich, dropping dead before he could retaliate. Throughout the fight, he passively observed, curious to see what kind of magic a fully evolved mage would demonstrate, but he was left with the impression that Liches simply aren't that impressive. In this world, either way, this is another clean dungeon clear. There should be a reward, right? Cattle casually picked up the scepter that Cardos used, curious if he could use it to practice magic too. He tried to fidget with the thing, and a magic crystal core gave out. He casually put the engine of his scepter's power in his pocket, treating it as loot. Afterwards, he checked on the vase that was used to house Cardos' soul. As a life vessel, he also yoinked that, and made a mental note to ask Rosa to get it appraised. With the scepter and the vessel in hand, he was quite satisfied with the rewards. Before leaving, the sinister magic circle drawn on one of the walls caught his attention, thinking that there must be a hidden room on the other side of this edgy painting. He poked around. Perhaps it would be more accurate to say that. He shattered the sturdy wall by lightly pressing on it. What lies behind the sinister wall was a bone-chilling sight. It was the Lich's hidden sacrificial chamber, filled with the unfortunate victims, suspended in an unconscious state. The tall thought he was going to get some extra loot. Not a room full of mortal souls lined up for sacrifice. Still, he was curious to know who these people were. He tested if they were conscious, even tried calling out to them, but they were entirely unresponsive. Clueless about what to do with this discovery, he decided to head back to the guild for now. There he can explain the situation to the authorities, and they will probably send some people over to take care of this mess. By the time he entered the guild's door, the sun was already up, unlike the first few days. Rosa, the receptionist, welcomed him with respect and enthusiasm. Instead of giving him weird looks, he brought up that he had to deal with some things, and that got her curious. Cattle shared that. He just finished uncovering the mystery of the orb he showed Rosa yesterday. He gave her the complete rundown of what happened in the hidden dungeon, and her first thought was that he must be joking. But as far as she knows, there are only 5 Liches in existence. Their backwater territory cannot possibly be the hiding spot of one. To prove his story, Cattle pulled out the vase that once served as Carlos's life vessel. It oozed an ominous air, and this lunatic wants some ordinary receptionist to appraise the cursed object. Rosa didn't know how to respond to that ridiculous request. She then realized that the ridiculous tale this barbarian casually shared really happened. He also shared that he found a few people held captive in a secret room for a sacrificial ceremony. If this barbarian keeps on doing shit like this, Rosa might die at a young age. I thought about bringing them out, but their minds were basically gone. It would be best if someone professional checked them out. Come to think of it, there has been a rise in the disappearance of the territory. If that was the work of a Lich, then this is way above a receptionist's pay grade. She needs to call someone immediately. The first captain of the guards barged into the guild hall as soon as he was notified about the Lich. In there, he found the barbarian sitting at one of the tables, making the furniture look kid-sized. Cattle assured the anxious captain that the worst has been taken care of, so there's nothing to worry about. When he mentioned the name Cardos Bernulius Kessis, while recounting what happened, The first captain was flabbergasted. Of course he knows the name. How you can ask a random dude in the street, and he would know the name. Cardos was pure evil in sorcerer form. He turned the world upside down and created emotion. Manipulation magic. The man who drove 5 kings mad and ruined 5 kingdoms. Ordinary people these days would shit their pants upon hearing that the madman turned himself into a lich. But Cattle insisted that the lich wasn't all that impressive. Cardos ended up self-destructing, knowing how important this news was. The first captain pried for a more detailed explanation. Even though Cattle really wanted to help, there's not much else he could share. It was just over so quickly. Then the first captain asked the barbarian to wait for a moment while he notified Lord Varkin. When the overseer of the territory heard about the existence of an agent of death near his region, he couldn't believe his ears. He tried gaslighting himself into thinking that it must have been a different kind of monster. But based on the testimonies of the people rescued and healed a minute ago, they were positive that their captor was a lich. There's also physical proof in the form of a life vessel. Now it's only a matter of time before the Empire dispatches investigators to look into this incident. Timing could not be any worse. With Lord Cain away from the estate, still it is the Lord's duty to send word and keep the capital up to date about such things. Even so, they could consider themselves lucky. If the barbarian had not found that lair, this whole situation could have been so much worse. Carthus was likely in the midst of preparations to resurrect himself. Atal accomplished yet another remarkable feat, and he must receive a reward fitting for that triumph. Lord Varkin could not think of what to offer the peculiar man. That would be adequate a day later. The Lord woke up and put on his robe. Drip, as the morning started, one of his maids frantically entered the room to inform him of the arrival of the sun god's inquisitor, Lord Aquaz, to investigate the estate. Varkin quickly changed into a more proper attire and met the esteemed guest gentleman. The inquisitor of the sun god is an absolute baddie. He invited her to be seated, and they shared an uncomfortable silence. Lord Luke Varkin stammered an introduction of himself and his estate. He thanked her for the visit despite how sudden it was. Ak was inquisitor of the sun god, judge of heresy in his name, imposingly introduced herself. He was the youngest person to ever be appointed to such a prestigious title. She once beheaded 7 warlocks who had signed pacts with demons and single-handedly disrupted a massive pagan ritual. Aquaz is unanimously hailed as the most powerful inquisitor of the sun god. On the continent, even the empire defers when it comes to the sun god's church, making her an extremely influential figure. She holds power that far exceeds a mere provincial lord. Like Luke over here, why would someone like that travel all the way to the backwater countryside? Lord Varkin began recounting what happened with the hidden dungeon nearby, but assured the inquisitor that it had been resolved. Then, he asked her for the particular reason for this visit. She professed that she traveled long to speak with Luke Varkon about a divine oracle. However, before sharing its contents, she wanted to hear more about what had happened in this territory recently. Left with no recourse, Luke Varkon gave all the juicy details about the lone barbarian who defeated the lich. He also has it in good authority that the evil entity was once Carthus. Branulus Kesses to back up the story. He brought out the phylactery, the house Carthus's soul. As a life vessel, even the inquisitor was taken aback. She unconsciously gripped her sun pendant, in fear of what in the world just happened in this land. Then Aquaz ominously asked if the barbarian was still in the estate. He truthfully answered that the man is still staying in the territory. The inquisitor was still feeling skeptical about the validity of the claim that Cardos was defeated just like that. So the Lord added that the barbarian also washed Lord Cain. Fair and square, this means a new powerhouse had emerged. Aquaz wanted to know which tribe the barbarian hailed from. When he mentioned the White Wastelands, the inquisitor instantly imagined a being from the demon realm. Normally, such creatures are not allowed to wander outside their realm. Now she's considering that the barbarian must be the reason for her visit. So she formally requested a sit-down meeting with the enigmatic man. Meanwhile, Cattle is busy pondering yet another shiny object, the crystal he plucked out of the lich's scepter. From what he could gather, this is some kind of artifact that supports magic. It would be better to consult a mage about it. Later down the line, come to think of it, it's about time he went out. Earlier in the day, the first captain solemnly asked him to meet with the inquisitor of the sun god in the church. He also asked the barbarian to show proper respect to the lady. When they met after gearing up, he went straight to the church. for the scheduled meeting. In this world, gods truly exist, and they are omnipresent beings. They bestow power directly to those they deem worthy, and would sometimes descend on the mortal plane. People would build shrines to worship and serve them, a church to congregate in faith. Seeing the Church of the Sun God in person, Cattle was starstruck by its sheer size and majesty. The first captain instructed him on how this meeting would pan out. Someone will guide Cattle once he gets inside. Upon entering, he was in awe of the church's interior, fitting to be a place of worship for the sun god. He was respectfully received by 3 nuns. Serving the faith Inquisitor Aquaz is already waiting, so he awkwardly follows the nun's lead. He was led to the inner sanctum and laid eyes upon the youngest, Inquisitor of the sun god. She was prim proper and respectful. He was just having fun, seeing that this woman achieved the highest honor of her faith. At such a young age, he recognized that she must be very good at her job. A glimpse of his enigmatic smile caught the Inquisitor off guard. Getting straight to business, Cattle asked about the purpose of this meeting. As expected, she wanted to inquire about the recent dungeon incident, where the alleged Cardos, a man who committed grave atrocities across the world, was felled by her estimation. Only heroes would have been powerful enough to stand against such an evil force of nature. Cattle recognized her preamble, but the Cardos he saw was just a bumbling skeleton, flailing about on his own, who ended up destroying himself. He could see that the Inquisitor had some reservations about his story, but he could only speak of what he saw. To remedy this lack of trust, Aquaz proposed that they let her god serve as a direct witness to this conversation. If one lies in the presence of a deity, there will be a divine reaction. It's basically a divine lie detector that smites the untruthful. Based on her knowledge about the brutish barbarians, she expected him to disagree with this method, but she had never met a barbarian like this one. Cattle was more than willing to go under that godly lie detector. This is the perfect chance to experience divine power. In person, how could he miss out on that? She was more confused to see him look so excited, instead of apprehensive normally. Anyone would be uncomfortable when you say that a god is watching and observing, but he simply has nothing to hide. He's not one to tell lies. After all, with his acceptance, Inquisitor Aquaz initiated the process. She prayed to the sun god, who watches from the highest place, the one who oversees the sun itself. With omnipresent gaze, all falsehood shall be revealed in this space. An intense beam of sunlight descended upon the church, enveloping it with omniscient divine power. Now, this is what Cattle wants. This was straight out of fantasy game. It was an odd sensation. He could feel an all-powerful presence. Beyond the bright light, it was massive, a being that cannot be simply described in human words. Cattle could somehow perceive that the divine, all-seeing, I was looking at him with a sense of confusion. 2 people sat across from each other, while a divine being permeated the space around them. The Inquisitor was just pleased that no instant divine reaction was activated. Now they can finally begin talking, without a hint of deceit from now on. Within this pillar, nothing false shall be permitted. Cattle crossed his arms, nodded, and prepared himself for a truthful conversation. They finally begin their conversation. Under the observation of the sun god, our boy calmly explains how he cleared the dungeon, mentioning that the lich self-destructed on its own. Surprisingly, his words cause no negative reaction. The girl thinks to herself that this barbarian is truly lucky. She assumes that Cardos must have exhausted too much energy while preparing for resurrection. Otherwise, if he were in his original magical state, this barbarian would not still be alive. Her thoughts break when Cattle asks whether her doubts are now cleared. She confirms that they are, and also apologizes for her rude behavior earlier. The barbarian responds with a faint smile, admitting that he actually finds the situation somewhat entertaining. Aquaz then asks whether he truly comes from the white snowfield. Our boy answers directly that he is indeed from those frozen lands. She asks again to confirm, and he gives the same reply. This makes her shocked, since it means that he is truly from the demon realm, and could even be the gray barbarian mentioned in the Emperor's ancient legends. At that moment, the hero turns the tables and asks her a question, catching her slightly off guard. He asks why she has come to this territory. Carefully, she explains that she is here for a personal matter. Cattle's expression grows more intense, and with a serious tone he questions whether that personal matter is simply to confirm if he is an unclean being. Feeling tense, the girl tries to hide the truth and claims she does not understand what he is implying. Our boy mentions that, while he is not completely certain, it seems excessive for a god to observe someone merely to catch a lie. The girl realizes that she cannot deny his statement, because no lie can remain hidden before the god's eye. She admits that he is right. He then asks whether this has been her mission. From the very beginning, Aquas denies it, and explains that he was not her original target. She reveals that an oracle came from the sun god, and when she first arrived in this territory, she briefly suspected that he might be the person mentioned in the oracle. The girl apologizes again for hiding her true intentions, but he responds calmly, saying it is fine, and that he finds the whole situation interesting. Cattle then asks another question, wanting to know the actual message of the oracle. The girl feels conflicted, since it is highly confidential information. Still, she tells him the oracle's message, though it is not revealed to the viewers. Our boy looks slightly shocked by what he hears, and the scene cuts the next scene. Shows the girl standing near a church window. When she hears approaching footsteps, she turns to see the lord of the territory. He gently asks if she seems troubled. She replies softly that she has met the barbarian. But after meeting him, her thoughts have become even more tangled. She explains that she is now completely certain that he is the barbarian, who came from the white snowfield of the demon realm. Lord Barkin is visibly shocked. Aquaz adds that, while his origin from the white snowfield is confirmed, no intelligence has ever come from within that region. Before internally, the Lord wishes that the barbarian's connection to the snowfield were just a rumor. If this information spreads, the entire world will be shaken, as many people want to explore the white snowfield, especially the Emperor. If the Emperor himself takes action, the chaos would be beyond imagination. The girl reassures him that he doesn't need to worry. They will handle the lich matter themselves, and keep the existence of this barbarian hidden from the public, feeling slightly relieved. The Lord asks whether all snowfield barbarians are like cattle. She replies that this is unlikely, and reasons that if all barbarians were like him, they would have already conquered the entire world. Lord Barkin reflects that barbarians are naturally physically strong, but stupidity usually comes with that strength. He wonders what would happen if they gained intelligence, along with power, realizing it is terrifying to even imagine. Breaking out of his thoughts, he nervously asks about rumors that the current barbarian king is different and possesses both power and intelligence. Aquas confirms that she has met him only once, but he is indeed very different from other barbarians. The Lord grows troubled and thinks that would be extremely interesting if Cattell and the barbarian king were ever to meet. The girl immediately denies it, admitting that she doesn't feel the same. She thinks to herself that relations between barbarians and the god servants have never been smooth, and the growth of barbarian power isn't something they can take lightly. The Lord then asks about the oracle's message, wondering why the entire meeting has been kept so private. Girl replies that she only needed to confirm one thing. When he presses further, she looks out the window and explains that she needed to confirm whether Cattle was a human, or merely a being that looked human. Growing even more curious, the Lord asks what kind of oracle message could make her so doubtful. She repeats the oracle's message, but once again it remains hidden from us. The Lord also shows a shocked expression upon hearing the message. The scene then shifts to his private chamber, where he asks the barbarian if he is doing well. Our boy tells him that he is doing fine, and wonders why he was called. The man admits that there is one matter to address, and mentions that while he would not call an apology, he has prepared a small reward for helping protect the territory. The next moment, the Lord quietly places a pouch on the table. Keto looks at it with curiosity, and is slightly surprised to see that it is a leather pouch. Noticing his reaction, the man explains that this is no ordinary pouch, and encourages him to check it himself. Our boy picks it up, and senses that it is actually special. Lord Barkin then reveals that it is an artifact-type bag. He explains that it can store multiple items, limited only by its internal capacity, and adds that the space inside is nearly as large as the reception hall. Where they are sitting, the barbarian is stunned, as this is the first real artifact he has ever owned. The Lord further explains that anything can be placed inside it, even objects larger than the opening. Cattle immediately decides to test it. He lifts his heavy axe, doubting how such a massive weapon could fit into such a small opening. In the next moment, the axe is completely pulled into the pouch. The sight leaves him speechless. The Lord explains that to retrieve an item, he simply needs to put his hand inside, and imagine the object. Our boy follows the instructions, and easily pulls the axe back out, with a spark in his eyes. The Lord says that this is his gift for saving the territory. Seeing his reaction, he considers the matter settled. However, a deeper worry lingers in his mind. The issue of the prophecy still remains unresolved, and he wonders what is happening in his distant territories. The words of the sword master echo in his memory, warning that things from the demon realm have begun to appear in the world, and that something major is unfolding. The Lord connects this to the prophecy, and recalls what Aquas had mentioned, that a great evil would descend in this territory, and spread across the entire world. This is the oracle's prophecy. Around the same time, the truth about the Varkan territory begins to surface. A network of villages lies scattered across the land, and suddenly contact with one of them is lost. At first it is not treated as a serious issue, but when people from a neighboring village are sent to check on it, they never return. The Lord then dispatches official guards. Yet they also disappear. That is when he realizes that something extremely dangerous is happening. Sometime later, at the mercenary guild, Rosa informs our boy that an urgent request has arrived from Lord Barkin. She explains that the mission is to investigate the village that has lost contact. The task is simply to go there and confirm the situation. But she adds that the pay for this seemingly simple mission is unusually high. Cattle finds the mission appealing and immediately decides to accept it. Gathering is soon held for the mission, and a priestess also arrives as a participant. When our boy notices her, he approaches her, and she looks visibly surprised to see him. He is wearing a newly made custom outfit, which the priestess immediately notices. He explains that his old snowfield clothes have worn out, so he personally requested a new design. The priestess then asks whether he has also accepted this mission, and he confirms it, remarking that there is no reason to pass up such an interesting task. Hearing this, she thinks to herself that this barbarian is truly unusual. Our boy then questions why she is alone, and why her usual companions, Tyrannus and Kazan, are nowhere to be seen. She guesses that they may have rejected the mission. After reviewing its details, after scanning the crowd, the barbarian notices that the number of participants is far lower than expected. He had assumed that a simple mission with high pay would attract many mercenaries, but the total count is fewer than 10. The priestess explains that, despite appearing simple and well-paid, the mission is actually somewhat dangerous. She reveals a rumor that the guards sent to the village never returned, meaning the task is far more serious than it seems. Even so, Cattle points out that the attendance is still unusually low. Hesitating slightly, the priestess shares another rumor that explains why. She reveals that it involves Lady Aquas, which surprises him. Turns out that Aquas, who is also a heretic inquisitor of the sun god, is participating in the mission. She adds that very few mercenaries dare to work in her presence, and even admits her own fear that the girl might suddenly kill her. Our boy reassures her, saying that nothing like that will happen. He describes the inquisitor as polite and kind. When the priestess asks further, he confirms that she is his friend. The priestess struggles to accept the idea that a heretic inquisitor and a barbarian could be friends. At that moment, Cattle steps forward and greets the girl, saying that it is good to see her again. Aquas responds coldly, implying that she does not remember ever becoming his friend. He laughs and suggests that they can become friends starting now. The inquisitor ignores the suggestion and shifts her attention to the priestess instead. She asks whether the priestess is also a follower of Lady Calrosia. Our boy is surprised that she knows the priestess. The girl then asks why the priestess is here, as she believes Calrosia's followers are currently supposed to be in a rest period. Only high-ranking members should be active at this time. She immediately withdraws her suspicion, thinking that she may be mistaken, since it is impossible for her to know every detail of every religious organization. At that moment, the guard captain arrives at the gathering point. With his soldiers, our boy recognizes him at once and greets him cheerfully. The guard captain formally welcomes all the participants, confirms everyone's presence, and announces that it is time to begin the mission. The group starts moving forward, and with everyone gathered like this, our boy thinks that the atmosphere resembles the beginning of a raid. He looks toward the inquisitor and asks whether her moving now means that the predicted time has arrived. She is slightly startled and hesitates, admitting that she cannot say for certain. Since the oracle's prophecy never reveals an exact timing, it is also possible that the village has simply lost contact. For ordinary reasons, the barbarian smiles and responds that the possibility still remains. Eventually, the group reaches the location. Cattle and the priestess freeze for a moment, stunned by what they see as silent. Peaceful village lies before them. The guard captain scans the area with sharp eyes, Sensing the unnatural quiet, he asks the Inquisitor whether she feels any presence, and she calmly replies that she senses nothing at all. Hearing this, the captain concludes that the villagers may have fled. He then firmly orders the group to split up. In search for clues, everyone acknowledges the command, and the group starts searching. Still, the captain feels a bit tense. The village is small, capable of supporting barely 100 people, and yet all of them seem to have vanished. Without leaving a trace, there must be some clue. The search begins, and one of the members freezes as he enters a house. His eyes widen when he sees food placed on the table. He immediately calls the captain over and reports what he has found. The captain initially assumes that panicked villagers may have left the food behind. While fleeing, however, the member adds that the food is still warm. The captain's eyes widen in shock. He steps inside the house himself, walks up to the table, and stares at the steaming meal. Contact with the village was lost days ago, and investigators had already been sent before. Yet none of them ever returned. The captain asks if there is any trace of the villagers, but the answer is a firm no. There are no signs of escape, no evidence of hiding, and no tracks at all. Still, he orders them to continue searching. Everywhere they look, there are signs of daily life, but no sign of any human presence. The captain checks with the other teams, but the reports are the same. There are traces of living, yet no traces of departure. Finally, he turns to Aquas and asks if she has any idea what is happening. Distressed, she admits that she has none. He then turns to our boy with the same question, but he also has not found any clue. The captain is frustrated hearing this, when our boy suggests that they should try asking from someone who might actually know for some reason. His words shock him. Our boy points out that they are not alone, and someone else is standing among them. The captain's heart skips a beat as he looks at the barbarian. In confusion, our boy explains that there is an unfamiliar presence that wasn't here when they arrived. He suddenly points at a woman in the crowd who isn't part of their group. The mysterious woman gives a faint smile, intrigued that our boy noticed her. Despite her perfect disguise, Cattle responds that it is only natural to notice when a stranger suddenly stands before you. The woman lets out a light laugh, remarking that usually no one recognizes her, not even the sun god's Inquisitor, who failed to detect her. She observes that the barbarian shows no sign of a mysterious awakening and demands to know who he is. Before our boy can answer, the guard captain suddenly shouts for everyone to fall back. With a distressed expression, Aquaz whispers that she still feels nothing. No presence at all. Both the captain and the priestess are shaken to the core. If even the church's top Inquisitor cannot sense this being, then there are only two possibilities. Either it is not a creature of evil, or it is such a high-level evil that it can't even be detected. The strange woman clicks her tongue in disappointment, admitting that she had hoped to quietly follow them and scout their territory. At that moment, her face begins to twist, and she starts changing into her true form. After completing her transformation, she lets out a wicked smile and declares that she will take the barbarian to hell as her slave. The demoness reveals her terrifying true form and releases a massive, destructive sphere of purple energy. Everyone stares in shock as she starts floating in the air, right in front of their eyes. The guard captain shouts for everyone to run and save themselves, but the group quickly realizes that escape is impossible. They are trapped inside a transparent magical barrier. They try to break it by force, yet every attempt fails. The demoness announces to the entire village that the area is now under her absolute control, and that no one can escape her grasp. With a wicked smile, she declares that everyone present has become her prey. Trembling in fear, the priestess admits that this entity is a named demon, one of the most dangerous kinds of demons in existence. She prays desperately for her god to free them from this nightmare. Catal gently pats her head and calmly reassures her that he is with her and will not abandon her. He then asks what a named demon actually is and how it differs from others. With a shaking voice, she explains that most demons are merely weak fragments, but some are true, original beings born from the deepest darkness, demons who choose their own names. She adds that even the weakest named demon can destabilize an entire kingdom and plunge it into chaos. Our boy realizes that the demon standing before them is one of those terrifying entities. By observing her distinctive horns, the priestess recognizes her as a she-deer, a legendary demoness who caused immense destruction centuries ago. Hearing all this, the barbarian asks whether the barrier can be broken by force. The priestess answers in despair that it is impossible, The area has already become the demon's domain, and the only way out is to defeat her, something that is nearly impossible. However, the moment our boy touches the barrier, it begins to crack and crumble. He laughs quietly and decides to enjoy watching the situation unfold. A little longer, the priestess stares at him in shock, but he smiles and assures her not to worry. Meanwhile, the demon girl turns to the Inquisitor, mocking her for not being able to see through her tricks. The girl realizes that the signs of life in the vanished village were nothing but illusions, an elaborate demonic scheme designed to manipulate humans and trap them. She reacts with anger, calling her vile and despicable. But Ashidia remains completely unfazed. Meanwhile, our boy watches all of this while eating popcorn and wearing his 3D glasses. Aquas reflects that summoning a named demon into the physical world requires an enormous sacrifice of souls, and that the population of a single village should barely be enough, turning an entire territory into a demonic domain without being detected should be nearly impossible. She is shocked at how the Demoness managed to enter this world and infiltrate it unnoticed. The demon girl responds mockingly, making it clear that she has no intention of revealing her secret. Enraged, the Inquisitor condemns her as vile evil that has come to defile Holy Land. This makes the demon girl laugh loudly, and she hits back, calling her an obedient dog of the gods. She mocks her further by questioning whether her god can truly save her from this situation. The demon girl then grows serious and declares that deep cracks are forming in the fabric of the world, and that this world no longer belongs only to humans. In gods long ago, there was an ancient war in which gods and humans once fought fiercely against evil, ultimately achieving victory and banishing it to deep dimensions. The demon girl proudly proclaims herself as the demon of gravity, stating that she has waited centuries in hell for this moment. She vows to erase the shame of past defeat and cover the entire world in darkness and evil. Aquas counters with fury, insisting that the world belongs to humans and gods alone, and that such a disgusting creature must return to where it came from. She begins a sacred ritual and calls upon her god. A massive pillar of brilliant golden light engulfs her as she starts transforming into a divine warrior. Seeing her transform, our boy realizes that it's true, that the enemy never attacks during a transformation. When the transformation ends, the girl stands clad in divine golden armor, looking like a full-on holy knight. Ashityar finds the transformation amusing and summons a massive crystal scythe. After they are both done aura farming, the fight finally starts, and the Inquisitor charges forward at incredible speed. The two collide violently, releasing a massive explosion of energy that shakes the ground after the blast. Both are thrown backward. The demon girl remains standing confidently and comments that battles should be fought with dignity and respect. She mocks divine hunters for not knowing combat rules. The Inquisitor glares at her with intense fury, grips the ground firmly, and launches herself forward at full speed once more. The demon stands completely fearless, then vanishes in an instant, leaving only an afterimage behind, unable to follow her movements. Our divine girl gets completely outplayed. Suddenly the demon appears behind her, and she barely manages to react in time, blocking the attack with her shield. As sparks burst from the impact, demon smirks and signals that she is about to be crushed. She generates a concentrated surge of demonic energy at her fingertip and releases it. Aqua struggles to hold her shield, but the force steadily pushes her back. Eventually the pressure becomes too much, and the Demoness' power pierces her defense. The instant her defense breaks, the Inquisitor begins reciting holy scripture. As she chants, radiant light bursts forth, forming a defensive holy barrier. The move forces the demon girl back, and the divine girl is back on her feet. The Demoness is genuinely surprised that someone so young can recite scripture at this level, and admits that it is impressive. The girl continues chanting, invoking another scripture capable of burning away evil. She launches her attack toward the Demoness, who reacts, instantly meeting it head-on and countering with a strike infused with demonic power. Their attacks clash, and the demon girl manages to deflect the light. Aqua struggles, shocked that her attack has been countered so cleanly. The two exchange repeated, full-force attacks with their weapons, colliding again and again. One shines with holy energy, while the other with demonic power. The clash between light and darkness becomes so intense that the surrounding area begins to suffer. The priestess trembles in fear from the shock waves. Some party members retreat, and try to flee, unable to withstand the pressure of the battle. Violent clashes continue one after another, and the mixture of holy and demonic energy makes the atmosphere increasingly overwhelming. Cattle watches the entire battle with excitement and finds it extremely entertaining. The priestess asks whether he can help Lady Aquas. Our boy calmly replies that he can help, but then casually wonders why he should. His answer shocks the priestess, but he explains that interfering would only ruin the fight, although he does want to fight a demon himself someday. For now, he prefers to simply enjoy watching the battle. The priestess is left completely stunned, thinking, this is nothing like how things are supposed to go. Meanwhile, the Divine Knight and the Demoness continue, exchanging powerful blows. At one point, both are pushed back after their strikes collide. Ashidir acknowledges that the Inquisitor truly deserves the title of the god's hunting dog. She believes her own strength is superior, yet the matchup is not in her favor. She starts feeling pressured as the girl steadily pushes her back. The Demoness realizes that if the battle continues like this, it will drag on for far too long. So she decides to change tactics to gain the upper hand. Ashidir suddenly shifts direction, and Aquaz instantly understands her intention. And instead of facing the Inquisitor, she charges toward the party members instead. None of them can react in time, and blocks it, saving everyone. The members are frozen in fear, trembling, as they witness the clash between a divine warrior and a named demon after this move. The Inquisitor finds it harder to defend, and is forced to continuously deflect the demon girl's relentless attacks filled with anger. She curses the demon, while Ashidir responds with mocking laughter, implying that fairness cannot be expected from a demon. The Inquisitor grows even more furious and starts chanting another holy scripture, forming a sacred rail around herself. She urges the party members to quickly move into her holy zone. They rush inside and thank her, while the demon girl watches with a smug smile, mocking the waste of such precious scripture. Enraged by this, the Inquisitor advances with the intent to attack. The Demoness welcomes her approach and steps forward as well. Aquas grips her sword tightly and launches a clean holy strike, but the Demoness easily deflects it and moves with gymnastic grace to stand before her. She mocks the girl, claiming that no one will ever recognize her noble sacrifice. She further taunts her by suggesting that if she loses, the honor of the sun god will be disgraced. But if she wins, both her prestige and her god's influence will rise. However, in order to do that, she must remove the protective barrier from the group. The girl grows both angry and cautious. Clearly sensing a trap, she ignores the provocation and prepares for the next attack. Suddenly, a massive surge of demonic energy floods the surroundings. She barely manages to hold it back with her shield, as the Demoness floats in the air, completely enveloped in demonic power. In the next moment, she senses something enormous rushing toward her. A Ashidir appears right in front of her, and a violent explosion erupts. The girl is forced back, planting her feet and bracing herself, only to be shocked when the Demoness keeps advancing. Without pause, the demon girl releases waves of tentacle-like demonic energy that surround the Inquisitor from all directions. Pushed to the edge, she begins chanting scripture, but the Demoness suddenly emerges from the energy pool, right beside her, clearly intending to stop her. She slams Aquas into the ground and covers her mouth to interrupt the chant, then raises her weapon to deliver a killing blow. The girl barely lifts her shield in time to block the attack, but cracks spread across it, and defending becomes nearly impossible. With a smug smile, the Demoness shatters the shield completely and flicks her finger, unleashing a massive surge of demonic energy. The Inquisitor is bound in chains of power and struck directly. She screams in pain as her holy barrier collapses. Party members tremble in terror, as they know they can't survive for long. Without her shield noticing this, the demon girl laughs cruelly, announcing that she will be having all of them for dessert. But first, she wants to get a taste of the noble god's hunting dog. Just as she is about to strike, a voice tells her to stop. Turns out it's our boy Katao. He tells her that this is enough. The Demoness is shocked, unable to understand when he appeared, or how she failed to sense his presence. In the next instant, he grabs her and effortlessly throws her into the air, causing her to violently crash into the ground. He then reaches out to the Inquisitor and asks if she's all right. However, the girl is unable to respond, lost in thought, as she recalls that this is the same warrior who defeated Swordmaster Kane. Meanwhile, Ashish's rage explodes as her eyes turn blood red. Both the Barbarian and the Inquisitor turn toward her, As she rises from the ground, she angrily insults our boy, furious that he dared to interrupt her meal. He stands calmly with folded arms and states that the Inquisitor is his friend and that he will not allow her to die. The demon girl declares that she intended to turn him into her toy, but he immediately responds that he has no intention of becoming her plaything. Smirking, she raises her weapon and declares that he should die for that. The Inquisitor tries to stand and urges the barbarian to retreat, warning that he cannot defeat the demoness. Our boy calmly replies that he is strong enough, but she insists that strength alone is meaningless. Only divinity can banish a demon. It's a law that has existed since gods and demons came into being. Moreover, this is a demonic domain where only gods can stand against a demon. Our boy thinks for a moment, then remarks that she does not look fit to continue fighting. The girl responds that she serves her god and must stand against the demoness no matter what. Impressed by her dedication, he gently places a hand on her head and praises her resolve, then casually stepping forward, he tells her to leave the rest to him. The girl is left speechless by his words, as he admits that he has always wanted to fight a demon. Ashtia lets out a soft laugh, doubting that he can defeat her, but our boy responds mockingly, implying that she is welcome to test it. Licking her lips, she agrees that it will be fun. In the next moment, she steps out of the rift and appears right in front of Keatle. The Inquisitor stares in shock, since she didn't expect her to strike so quickly. However, before she can even reach the barbarian, he clenches his fist and at lightning speed, delivers a sharp punch to her head. The demoness doesn't even get a chance to react, and her head is blown clean off. This sight leaves the Inquisitor completely frozen, with nothing but his bare fist. Our boy had crushed the head of a powerful demoness as easily as smashing rotten fruit. Moments later, he notices movement in the demoness' body. Dark energy violently swirls around her neck as her head begins to regenerate. He smiles, faintly noting that her head grows back, even after being completely destroyed. She stares at him with hatred and disbelief, realizing that it is impossible for him to be an ordinary human. But our boy calmly presents himself as nothing more than a simple barbarian, even though she refuses to accept that answer. Her demonic senses detect no aura, magic, or mysticism coming from him at all. Confused, she wonders how such terrifying physical strength can exist without any supernatural power. To test him, she creates a demonic portal behind him. With a wicked smile, she leaps through it at lightning speed and attacks him from behind, confident that his weak human body cannot withstand her. However, her smile freezes instantly when the barbarian drives a crushing, cannonball-like punch into her chest. Dark blood bursts from her mouth, and for the first time her demonic body feels true pain. She is sent flying through the air, hurled away like a tiny insect caught in a hurricane. A massive hole is visible in her chest, and when she crashes into the ground, a small crater forms beneath her. Trembling, she cannot comprehend how a simple punch carries such destructive power. Our boy calmly observes her regenerating once again, while she finally understands the terrifying truth. This strength is not enhanced by aura or magic. It is pure, overwhelming physical power. Cattle grows genuinely curious about the mechanism behind her rapid regeneration. Without hesitation, he stomps the ground with such force that shockwaves crack the rocks around him. In an instant, he launches himself toward her at insane speed. Demon Girl barely has time to guard and summons her demonic hammer before he closes the distance. His violent punch lands squarely on her face, smashing her headless body back into the ground. Once again dense, dark energy erupts from her neck as her body becomes covered in a thick demonicoa. The barbarian watches in surprise as within seconds, her head regenerates once more and she rises again. Fully restored, he smiles slightly, noticing that her head keeps returning every time it is destroyed, and he wonders if it might be her life source. Ashisher is furious at this humiliation. She mocks the idea that brute force alone could defeat her and senses that the barbarian is not even using his full strength. Yet with pride, she declares herself the demoness of gravity and asks how he dares to continue fighting her with only raw power. Our boy stares at her silently for a moment, and then calmly mentions that she is not very impressive. Those simple words shatter her demonic pride. Screaming in rage, she unleashes her true power. Dark gravitational energy gathers in her hands and forms a massive black warhammer. She swings it with enough force to crush giant boulders, but he blocks the attack with his bare hand. This causes her to freeze in shock, as his grip suppresses the hammer's gravity completely. With a single punch, he shatters the weapon, and follows up by smashing her head apart. For the third time, as she regenerates yet again. Disbelief overwhelms her mind. Her gravity power can compress the weight of castle walls into a single strike, yet an ordinary barbarian, without even a trace of mystic power, has not only stopped it, but destroyed her weapon as well. In rage, she fires a massive beam of dark energy at our boy, convinced this will end him. However, the barbarian does not step back. Instead, he stands firm and punches straight into the beam. His punch collides with the demonic energy, creating a massive explosion of white light. The overwhelming strength completely erases the attack, and the shockwave slams directly into Ashidyar. From a distance, Aquas watches in shock and terror, questioning what she is witnessing. According to legends, this demoness once destroyed an entire kingdom alone. Yet now that same legendary demoness is being brutally dominated by bare fists. Despite his overwhelming assault, our boy notices that her body is still regenerating. This makes him realize that killing her with pure physical force is nearly impossible. The demon girl hears this realization and let out a cunning smile. This is the first time in her life that she has faced such pressure. She admits that he is overwhelmingly strong and asks again about his true identity. He calmly repeats that he is just an ordinary barbarian. The demon girl knows this is a lie, yet the fear and thrill it brings strangely excite her. She decides to use one final test. Her entire body dissolves into liquid, dark energy, slipping out from beneath his feet and rising into the sky. Cattle and Aquas both watch in shock as the dark energy gathers into a massive black sphere in the air, tearing apart nearby rocks and pulling debris toward it from above. The demon girl challenges the barbarian, declaring that she will now tear him apart. With her full power, she gathers all her energy and prepares her most dangerous attack, shaping dark gravity into countless sharp thorns, aimed downward. Despite all this, he doesn't take it seriously. Meanwhile, the Inquisitor knows this is dangerous. She also believes that brute force alone cannot stop this attack, and G needs divine power. With a smile, the demoness unleashes her final command. An endless rain of sharp, dark thorns pours down from the sky like black rainfall. Yet our boy does not move an inch. He spins his arms at unbelievable speed, creating a violent wall of wind that shatters every thorn and forms an impenetrable shield around him. Seeing this, Ashidyar cries out in shock, unable to comprehend what kind of monstrous being he truly is. Her disbelief deepens even further when our boy suddenly leaps forward, moving so fast that he surpasses the speed of sound. At that very moment, Inquisitor seizes the opportunity and chants another verse of her holy scripture, declaring that divine light will now erase all evil. The divine energy condenses and transforms into an axe, landing directly into the barbarian's hands, making him wonder if this is a gift from God. The girl shouts that she has poured all of her remaining divine power into it, and that he must finish the demoness now. Hearing this, he grips the axe tightly and announces that the fight is over. He swings the axe down in a powerful vertical strike, tearing effortlessly through Ashisha's demonic body. In that instant, she becomes completely certain of her defeat. Divine light burns her from both the inside and outside, and for the first time she screams in genuine agony. Her body soon collapses lifeless. Cattle walks over calmly and tells her that the battle was somewhat entertaining. With her final breaths, the demonist bitterly acknowledges that being sent back to hell in such humiliation is shameful. Still, she considers it not a total loss, because she has confirmed the existence of a being like him in this world before fading away. She asks for his name, and he answers without thinking. Aqua screams in fear and shock, begging him not to reveal it. But it's too late. The demon girl lets out a broken, mad laugh, using the last of her strength. She opens an invisible communication channel, ordering all demons to engrave the name Keetle, the barbarian, into their memories forever. The Inquisitor cries out in desperation, as the demoness further commands her followers to devour her memories after her death and learn everything about him. With one final insane laugh, she declares that this barbarian now belongs to their world. At that moment, some terrifying, demonic entities begin invading his consciousness. He stands still, confused, trying to understand what is happening within his inner world. Massive demonic entities appear like cosmic worms. However, his consciousness crushes them effortlessly, as if they are nothing at all. He asks the dying demoness what she has done, since he briefly felt something strange enter his body. Frozen in shock, she cannot comprehend why the demonic darkness that should have completely devoured both his body and soul has no effect on him. Without saying another word, our boy places his foot on what remains of her body and crushes it completely, destroying her forever. Aqua screams in absolute shock, and the priestess reacts the same way. As the purple barrier created by the demoness' death fades away, the barbarian stretches with a faintly satisfied smile and asks the girl if the mission is finally complete. News spreads like wildfire across the Gehenna Kingdom, especially in the quiet region of Barkon, where contact with the village was suddenly lost. Rumors claim that a terrifying demoness attacked the area soon. Newspapers print the name of Demoness Ashityar, identifying her as the cause of the disaster. The ruler of the territory sits in his office, overwhelmed by sadness and shock, wondering how such a horrific crisis could strike an area. However, he still believes there's a silver lining in all of this, since the sun god Inquisitor managed to temporarily force the demoness to retreat, buying time for them to breathe and plan their next move. The scene shifts back to our boy, as he mentions that territory seems shaken by what happened, with her eyes still closed. The Inquisitor replies that it was expected, since it's quite a big issue. Then she suddenly gets up and prepares to leave. Watching her, he suggests that she rest a bit more, since her body is still healing. However, the girl insists that she cannot stay, as she must return to the Holy Land and report everything that happened. Cattle understands and respects her decision. Without looking at him, she softly calls his name, which confuses him a bit, bowing deeply. She expresses heartfelt gratitude, admitting that without him, she would have remained trapped by the demoness. Our boy nods and gently replies that he only did what anyone would do. For friend curious, he asks whether this means they are friends now. The girl is slightly surprised by the idea of a barbarian and a sun god Inquisitor being friends. She reminds him that she belongs to a holy order, and seriously asks if he truly still wants her friendship. He wonders if there is any reason they cannot be friends, and after thinking for a moment, the girl admits that there is no reason at all. Hearing this, he smiles and announces that they are friends. In response, the girl gives a small smile of her own. He then admits that he is curious about something. When she asks what it is, he questions whether it is true that one should never reveal their real name to a demon. The girl nods and explains that this is absolutely true. She reveals that demons use names for special magic, called branding, which places an invisible dark mark on a person's soul. This mark acts like a beacon, attracting other evil entities, turning the person into constant prey, unless the mark is erased through an ancient baptismal ritual, or getting killed confused. Our boy asks if he has fallen victim to this marking. She reassures him, explaining that he is lucky and bears no mark. However, she warns that his name is now known to the beings of hell, and they can recognize him without a mark, though they cannot locate him unless he encounters them face to face internally. The girl knows that he has been identified as a target, but since hell has no way to track him, it does not seem like an immediate threat. The barbarian then thinks back to the battle and says that it's interesting that, despite his strength, he could not completely kill the demoness. With physical force, Aquaz explains that demons are fundamentally different from normal creatures. Their nature is mysterious. She recounts that the gods first created humans and gave them life. Humans were foolish and instinct-driven, yet the gods did not interfere in their world. Later, beings from another dimension invaded and slaughtered humans brutally. The gods descended to the earth, confronted these beings, named them demons, and sealed them back in their own world. With divine help, human civilization found peace and began to progress. Over time, for unknown reasons, demons began interfering again, because demons can only be defeated by holy, divine power. The gods granted fragments of their power to loyal followers, so they could face this renewed threat. Our boy finally realizes that demons cannot be completely destroyed, because they originate from another dimension. The girl confirms this, explaining that since this world is not truly theirs, pure physical strength alone cannot affect them fully. The barbarian, concerned that if such beings continue to appear, it will be dangerous for everyone. The girl explains that high-ranking, named demons do not enter this world easily, but recently disturbances have occurred, and dungeon cycles have become abnormal. It seems that the sealed demon world has begun influencing this realm, as more evil souls are gradually appearing. She adds that these changes began exactly 1 year ago. Cattle's eyes widen as he recalls that this was the same time he started his final quest. In the snowfield, after their long conversation, the girl thanked him once more and says that she must leave. She invites him to visit her order someday, assuring him that he will always be welcome there. He smiles and agrees that he will visit. The scene fades as the carriage slowly moves forward. Inside the carriage, the girl thinks that her body has not fully recovered, yet she must report everything to the Sanctus. Her thoughts drift back to our boy, and she wonders why the sun god never revealed any prophecy or sign about such a mysterious and powerful barbarian. Elsewhere in the grand palace of the empire, we see Master Cain walking through a lavish, ornately decorated corridor. He is completely exhausted after his long meeting with the emperor. Just then a voice echoes through the hallway, casually remarking that he looks especially worn out today. He immediately goes on alert and turns around to notice a man with long black hair. The old man recognizes him at once. He is the Grand Master of the Magic Tower, the place where the world's most powerful mages and mystics gather in a composed tone. The Tower Master wonders why the old man is here. Cain explains that he has come to submit a detailed report on his recent mission. Hearing this, the guy asks if he is talking about reconnaissance mission to the demon world, specifically to the region known as the Forest of Silence. He asks what that place was like. The old man's expression darkens instantly. He describes it as completely unnatural, a place that defied everything they know about the world. Just like its name, you can't hear a single thing in that forest. To make things worse, mystical detection also doesn't work. Even when he tried shouting, they couldn't sense a single vibration. In this silence, all of their soldiers started disappearing one by one. He describes the place as loathsome and cursed, and he wonders why the emperor is so desperate to conquer the demon world. The Tower Master replies that they can't figure out the minds of people in power. Yet he too is deeply interested in that world, as its secrets fascinate him. However, the old man doesn't share the same likeness, and admits that he would like to stay away from it. Before he can say anything more, the Tower Master suddenly raises his hand and snaps his fingers. A glowing magic circle forms on the floor, and in an instant, both of their bodies dissolve into light and vanish. The next moment, they're standing in a vast star-filled space. The old man immediately recognizes it as spatial magic and asks him what he is trying to do. The man smiles and casually brings up whether the old man encountered a special person. During his mission, Cain's expression freezes. He realizes that the Tower Master placed an observation spell on him and asks him when he did it. The man laughs and mentions that he did it during their last meeting, since observing others is one of his favorite hobbies. The old man sighs and asks what more that he wants to know. Now that he has seen everything, the Tower Master shifts the topic and asks for his opinion of the barbarian. From the white snowfield, the old man admits that he is not entirely sure what to make of that barbarian. Hearing this, the Tower Master casually adds that this same barbarian displayed enough strength to defeat a seasoned sword master, and even crushed a powerful being like the Lich Cardos. As if it were an insect, the old man is stunned, since he didn't know that Cattle was the one who defeated the Lich. The Tower Master explains that this has not yet been officially confirmed, but rumors have already spread throughout the Magic Tower that Cardos' resurrection failed. He adds that he personally visited his lair to pay his respects, as the Lich was one of the few friends he had left. Cain is surprised to see that even someone like the Tower Master can feel sadness. The Tower Master calmly reflects that after living so long, friendship becomes a necessity. He then casually mentions that no valuable artifacts were found in the Lich's lair. Growing suspicious, the old man questions whether all the artifacts had already been retrieved. When the Lich died, the Tower Master clarifies that the most of them were retrieved, but the most precious artifact has still not been found. He then asks whether he truly believes that the barbarian defeated Cardos alone. The old man answers quietly that he does. If it is that man, then such a feat is possible. Hearing this, the Tower Master stares him down and asks why he has not yet informed the Emperor about this barbarian. The old man replies coldly that there is no reason to. He believes the Emperor is already throwing talented people into the demon world like disposable tools. If the Emperor learns about him, a violent clash between them is inevitable. One is a barbarian who follows only his own will, and the other An emperor who seeks to control everything. A conflict between them would set the entire kingdom ablaze. The Tower Master finds this thought intriguing and asks whether he is implying that the barbarian could face the entire empire alone. After thinking carefully, the old man admits that the outcome is uncertain. However, when he met the barbarian, he felt the same presence he once felt. Upon first meeting him, this even makes the mage a bit surprised, and he wonders if the barbarian belongs to the legendary hero class. The old man says it is too early to decide, but the Tower Master has already made his plan for the barbarian. The scene shifts to the crowded streets of the barking territory. A woman walking ahead suddenly stumbles and nearly falls, but our boy reacts instantly, stepping forward to catch her and stop her from hitting the ground. In a calm manner, he reminds her to be careful and checks if she is unharmed. Usually people flee in fear when they see him. This time, however, the woman politely bows her head, thanks him, and continues on her way. He stands there for a moment, slightly confused, looking around. He notices that no one is staring at him, like he is some kind of freak. For the first time, it feels like people are no longer afraid of him, and he does not understand why. In his office, the Lord of the Barcan region welcomes our boy. He asks whether he is feeling better now, since he narrowly escaped a demon's brand. The barbarian calmly replies that nothing serious happened, then admits that he does not really understand what this brand. Even his lord listens carefully and thinks to himself that he always knew the barbarian was strong, but defeating a demonist is on another level entirely. He stops himself from dwelling on that thought and explains that things around cattle seem to have changed. When our boy asks if he means the people of the territory, the Lord nods. He explains that the change is likely due to the rumors now spreading everywhere. The guards and mercenaries who survived the incident have begun talking openly. According to these rumors, after Aquaz fell and everyone collapsed, only one man remained standing. When the survivors opened their eyes, they saw his axe shining with divine light. People began to believe that the Inquisitor had given him her divine power. Since then, he has been spoken of as the one who fought the demon. Alongside the girl, our boy finally understands how things reached this point. The Lord apologizes, explaining that by the time he tried to clear up the rumors, the story had already spread across the entire territory like wildfire. Cattle calmly replies that it does not bother him. Now, it makes sense why people are no longer afraid of him. Lord Barcan agrees and explains that people now see him as someone who stands against demons. The barbarian thinks about it for a moment and realizes that this is what reputation truly means. Sometime later, at the Mercenary Guild, Rosa greets him with a smile and congratulates him on his promotion. He is stunned when he learns that he has jumped 3 ranks at once and is now officially a C rank mercenary. The receptionist explains that he accomplished something worthy of such a promotion, and the news genuinely makes him happy. He adds that his new mercenary tag will be custom-made, so it will take some time. From C rank onward, mercenaries are officially certified by the guild, meaning others are now required to treat him with proper respect. He also mentions that this rank grants him access to most capital cities and churches, with the sole exception being the imperial capital. Hearing all this, he comments that the empire seems quite strict. The girl explains that entry into the imperial capital is decided entirely by the nobility. In truth, no one really knows what lies inside, as everything people hear is based on frightening rumors. These days, the capital itself feels even more mysterious than the demon realm. Hearing this, our boy realizes just how enigmatic the imperial capital truly is. Rosa then clarifies that he can now accept almost any request. He can even enter a ranked dungeons if he joins a team. He nods with a smile, thinking to himself that he'll now have access to many kinds of missions. Elsewhere, Tyrannos raises his drink and admits that he never expected things to turn out this way. He asks whether everything is truly over. Our boy explains that the credit for defeating the demon belongs entirely to the Inquisitor, who personally confirmed that the area is now safe. Upon hearing that the demoness has been defeated, the man lets out a relieved breath. Kazin praises the Inquisitor, calling her an exceptional, since she defeated a demon on her own. Meanwhile, the priestess thinks to herself that she never lost consciousness. That day she witnessed everything. The way the barbarian crushed the demoness in the real fight is something no one could ever forget. In her mind, Aquaz merely arrived at the end and took the final bite of an already finished meal. The real work was Cattle's. Kazin asks him what he plans to do now. After his promotion, our boy replies that nothing will change, and that he will continue doing his work as usual. The man praises his humility, thinking to himself how grounded he remains, even after fighting a demoness. At the same time, the priestess silently screams in her thoughts, warning him not to be fooled, since this barbarian is not a human. The barbarian then asks about their plans. Casson says he is still F rank, and has no clear direction for now. He admits that he once planned to live like a parasite, until he died after seeing him. He now wants to live his life with full effort. Hearing this, Tyrannus mocks him, joking that he is only realizing this now, and asking what else one could expect from a thief. The two glare at each other, and our boy turns to the priestess. To ask about her plan, she replies, and that she will continue to follow Lady Kalosia's will. As always, he recalls something he heard from the Inquisitor, that Kalosia's servants are currently on break, and only high-ranking members are active. The priestess is startled and quickly composes herself, claiming that the Inquisitor must be mistaken, and that she is just an ordinary priestess. Our boy replies that he will take her word for it. However, the girl can't help but panic, wondering if he already knows everything, and is simply toying with her. Late at night, the mercenary guild is almost empty. Rosa is packing up, preparing to head home, when the door opens and a stranger walks in, wearing a hood. The man says he wants to submit a request. He looks at him with tired eyes, already thinking about overtime, and asks what kind of request it is. The man explains that it is an escort mission for two people, himself and a young girl. Rosa begins writing down the details and asks for the destination. When a man says, the capital city of the Danaan kingdom, she freezes in shock. An escort mission to such a distant capital, from a remote region like Barsan, is extremely unusual. He studies the man carefully and realizes that something is off, even though she finds him suspicious. She tentatively accepts the request and asks him to present identification. At the request for identity confirmation, the man hesitates briefly before placing a metal card on the table. The moment Rosa sees it, she understands it is a mercenary guild token, something that is not easily obtained. She verifies his identity and asks for the commission fee. A man mysteriously takes out a coin and says he will use that as payment. Upon examining it closely, the girl realizes it is a coin made of pure gold. However, this amount is only enough to hire one person. Man is left stunned, unable to respond. She clarifies that a mercenary must stay with them for the entire journey, and the Danaan kingdom is extremely far away. The risk is high, and the journey could take nearly a month. Naturally, the cost reflects that. The man pleads, asking if anything can be done, because he needs at least 2 guards. The girl explains that it is possible, but the mercenaries would be of much lower rank. However, if he wants reliable guard, he should hire at least D-rank mercenaries. The man changes his stance, saying that he needs someone skilled. Hearing this, she repeats that the fair price only covers one person. When he asks again if there is no other way, Rosa wonders internally why he is so desperate. In a strict tone, she explains that it is already difficult to find anyone willing to take an escort mission from such a remote region, but she will try to man-size heavily and leaves the matter in her hands. After he leaves, she inspects the gold coin more closely. It is small but made of pure gold, and its surface has been carefully filed to hide its origin. This tells her that this request may bring trouble. The scene shifts tonight at a tavern. We see the same man knocking on the door of a private room. From inside, a young woman with golden hair asks who it is. The man introduces himself as Aaron and says that he is her loyal servant. Hearing this, she opens the door and lets him in. The young woman is alone inside the room. She anxiously asks how things went. The man explains that the guild accepted the request. She exhales in relief and asks how many people they managed to hire. Aaron hesitates before admitting that they could only afford 1 mercenary. This makes her a bit worried. He apologizes, explaining that they did not have enough money, even though the girl thinks it's not his fault. The man feels he messed up by getting scammed. Both of them look at each other with teary eyes and start crying, so loudly that a neighbor shouts at them to keep quiet. They exchange helpless looks, realizing that they cannot even cry in peace. Ellen then asks how long it will take, and the man admits that he does not know, as finding someone reliable may take time. She accepts this and thanks him for his efforts. Time passes, and the scene shifts to the following night. The girl stands anxiously, while Aaron feels ashamed of himself, since he still couldn't find a guard. They are running low on food supplies as well, and he thinks it's all because of him. Once again, she reassures him that it is not his fault. Running out of ideas, the man suggests informing the territory's lord about their situation, but the girl immediately refuses. She insists that no one can be trusted, and that even hiring a bodyguard is already a huge risk. The girl reminds him why they were forced to flee their kingdom in the first place, and how they never know who is truly a friend and who is an enemy even after all this time. No news has arrived from their homeland. The man apologizes, admitting that he has grown weak-hearted. The girl then wonders whether the Danaan kingdom is really safe. Man answers with confidence, believing that the kingdom will protect them. He recalls how the king of Danaan once swore an oath at the time of the princess's birth, and adds that these people may even help them take revenge. One day, he strongly believes that the princess must survive, because if she is lost, their kingdom will truly be finished. The princess is still not convinced about the guard, and questions whether they can really trust just a single mercenary. The man reassures her, explaining that they paid in gold, and that the guild will surely send someone reliable. Hearing this, she begins to imagine who their guard might be. Secretly hopes it will be a handsome knight-like mercenary elsewhere. Our boy sits alone in his room, feeling bored because he has nothing to do. His thoughts drift to his old friends, who once stood beside him in the white snowfield, ones who never distanced themselves from him. Knowing them, he believes they are still the same. Suddenly another thought strikes him, and he wonders whether his mission is finally over. Ever since he woke up in the white snowfield, the mission window had always followed him. At first he believed it is just a dream, but the cold and the monsters quickly proved that everything is real. His first mission was simply to survive for a week, and in that frozen land, the mission window felt like a guide. However, after leaving the snowfield, no new missions have appeared. Now that everything is calm, he is getting bored. It all makes him wonder if the system missions are limited only to the white snowfield. Although he is unsure, he feels grateful to the system and decides to enjoy this world in his own way. The next day, the scene shifts to the mercenary guild, where Rosa hands him a new request. When he asks about the type of mission, she explains that it is an escort request. The journey will take him several days, and all travel preparations are the mercenaries' responsibility. Hearing this, Cattle mentions that it will require serious effort. Girl agrees, but adds that the pay is also high. However, it seems too shady to just be a simple mission. Just as she is about to tell him that he can decline, he cuts her off and admits that the suspicion is exactly what makes it interesting. As the barbarian reviews the details again, the destination name catches his attention. He recalls hearing it before from a girl named Melina, of the Akasha family. She's the same girl he met in the snowy plains, who told him that he would be welcome there. Realizing this is a perfect opportunity, Cattle decides to accept the request. At that moment, a bright blue system window suddenly appears before him. He freezes in shock as quest number 785 displays itself, stating that the objective is to escort the client to the Danaan kingdom. He stands there in disbelief, wondering why the mission window appeared again. After so long from the reception desk, Rosa notices his strange reaction and calls out to him in concern. The scene shifts to the princess, who rushes toward the door after hearing hurried footsteps. As soon as she opens the door, the old man enters in a hurry while panting. This makes her anxious, and she asks if the trackers have found them. But Aaron quickly explains that the request is accepted. She feels confused, until he excitedly explains that the only C-rank mercenary in the region has agreed to take the job. This makes her relieved, and her eyes light up. The old man assures her it is true, and mentions that the meeting is scheduled for the next day. He encourages her to rest, and she happily agrees. Back with Cattle, he stares silently at the mission window, still floating before him. Keeps wondering why the system has activated again. After such a long time, as he continues thinking, a realization dawns on him. Perhaps the missions are not limited to the white snowfield. After all then, with a serious expression, he considers the possibility that something deeper is at work behind the system. Outside the mercenary guild, a thunderstorm begins to form. At night, Aline and the old man sit quietly inside the guild building. While waiting, the princess wonders what kind of mercenary will arrive. She imagines sharp features and a body covered in scars. Suddenly they all hear footsteps and the door opens. Rosa announces that the mercenary has arrived, and just when the princess turns around to look at him, she notices a terrifying giant staring back at her. The sight leaves her so scared that she turns into a manga panel. The thought of this terrifying man being their guard makes her faint as she collapses. The old man panics and shouts at our boy, asking who he is. Atal calmly observes the situation and realizes that it has been a long time since he has seen someone. So terrified, he asks Rosa whether these two are the clients who hired him, and she confirms it. She then formally introduces him as their escort. Hearing this, the old man explodes in shock and anger, demanding that the guild change the mercenary. The girl gives him a cold look and questions whether he is doubting the guild's decision. She sternly warns that questioning the guild's judgment will void the contract and result in a refund. Desperate, Aaron insists that he does not mean it that way. At that moment, our boy realizes that he has once again become a walking source of fear. Suddenly, the princess stands up and announces that she agrees with the guild's decision. The barbarian is slightly surprised as she steps forward, introduces herself, and expresses that she looks forward to working with him. The scene changes to a forest, and we see our boy walking ahead, while the two follow behind. He suddenly stops and mentions that they are keeping too much distance, and that it might be better to walk closer. Both of them look visibly nervous and quickly deny any problem. They laugh awkwardly, and the old man adds that they have not seen anyone suspicious. So far, our boy nods, unsure why, but deciding that as long as they are comfortable, it is fine. He turns forward again and resumes walking, maintaining some distance. The princess watches his back and reflects on how things have finally come to this point. After their meeting at the mercenary guild last night, the barbarian told them that from now on, they must trust him. He assured them that as long as he was with them, their safety was guaranteed. She nervously nodded, still doubting whether trusting him was the right decision. Suddenly, Cattle's voice breaks through her thoughts as he tells them that they will have to spend the night here. He explains that it's late, visibility is low, and it's normal, since they left on the request only in the evening. Reluctantly, they nod to each other. Our boy notices their hesitation and thinks to himself how deeply ingrained their fear of barbarians is, far more than he expected. He turns his back and realizes the situation will last a long time. Despite all this, he prepares to set up a place for them to sleep. From a magical artifact he was gifted, he takes out a huge tent and places it on the ground. Witnessing this, the princess and the old man can't help but be astonished. Aaron exclaims in disbelief, wondering how a barbarian could even possess such an artifact. Our boy calmly explains that he earned it as a reward after completing many requests. They're stunned once again. He tells them there is only one tent, so they will have to share it. The princess hesitantly asks what he will do, and he replies that sleeping outside is no problem for him, since he is used to it, and this situation feels like paradise compared to the snowfields. He adds that he will also stand guard all night, recalling the month he spent in the snowfields, being chased by monsters without sleep. Despite his reassurance, the girl refuses and mentions that he doesn't need to overwork himself. They all go back and forth on this for a while, until he finally accepts. However, he still regrets it a bit, since he was planning on gaining their trust. Meanwhile, the two don't want to sleep carelessly around him, as they fear that he might kill them in their sleep. The next morning, the princess emerges from the tent feeling exhausted, having slept poorly due to anxiety. She notices that the old man is also tired and feels extremely hungry. Noticing her, the barbarian suddenly asks if they are hungry. He comments that it's natural, since they haven't had a proper meal, and tells them to wait a little while. The princess stares at him in shock as he announces that he will cook for them. Moments later, he places oil on a pan over the fire and begins preparing ingredients. Both she and Aaron stand dumbfounded, as they can't believe that a barbarian knows how to cook. Horrified, the old man asks if he learned to cook before, and our boy casually replies that it's just a hobby. He explains that in the snowfields, people didn't cook, as they ate raw meat and monster blood to survive, using those same harsh ingredients. He taught himself to cook despite the danger. He recalls the difficulties of cooking and starting fires in such a hostile environment. Yet after countless attempts, he succeeded. Now he is confident he can cook anywhere. He finishes preparing a perfect shrimp pasta and presents it to them. Both of them are speechless at the sight. Despite the meal looking perfectly good, the girl refuses, claiming she's fine and doesn't like cooked food. She takes out dried meat instead and insists on eating only that. Walking in her footsteps, the old man quickly agrees to do the same. Seeing this, our boy asks in confusion if they like jerky and comments that he'll have to eat alone. The princess wants to eat with him, but she still can't get herself to trust a barbarian. Days pass, and on the third night of the journey, she tosses and turns in the tent. Exhausted and hungry, the old man watches her and worries about her well-being, realizing that this harsh journey has gone on 3 days without proper meals. He internally blames himself, thinking how difficult this must be for someone. Raised with care, the princess gives a faint smile, softly assuring him she is okay, and apologizes for worrying him. He lowers his head in concern, telling her there's no need to apologize. The princess gently asks how he is, pointing out that he must be tired from standing guard all night. Eren casually says he's fine, joking that old men don't sleep much anyway. As she finally drifts to sleep, he watches over her, thinking that he would even sacrifice his life for her safety the next day. Our boy is busy by the fire grilling meat and fish. They both sit quietly at a distance, eating their raw meat, however. The sight is too much to bear for the princess. Suddenly she stands and announces she is stepping away. For a moment, the barbarian curiously asks if she is going to the restroom. This takes her by surprise, and she calls him rude. Realizing his mistake, he apologizes, which also surprises her, since barbarians aren't known to feel sorry. She quietly leaves her spot and walks into the woods, while the other two watch in silence. The old man internally worries for his princess. Noticing him, our boy calmly comments that he knows they don't fully trust him, but he is their escort on this journey. Turning meat on the grill, he reminds them that he's human too, and can get hurt emotionally. Eren is stunned by this and lowers his head in shame, acknowledging that he understands. The tile returns to the grill and offers him a plate of grilled venison. The old man's eyes widen, since it looks like a dish from a five-star restaurant. Hesitant and nervous, he wonders if he should eat it. Meanwhile, the princess sits alone by the stream, feeling miserable. Her hunger is so intense that despite herself, she begins eating the dried meat, feeling pain in her legs from weakness. She feels completely drained, almost on the verge of collapsing, but she forces herself to endure, remembering the old man. She gets up and decides to be stronger for him, however. As she returns, she is shocked by what she sees. The old man and the barbarian are sitting together, eating the meat that he had prepared. The old man devours the grilled meat with such intensity that he seems oblivious to everything else. She calls out to him in an intense voice, catching him off guard, startled. He drops the meat and jumps up in panic, shouting that it's a misunderstanding. Before the guy can explain himself, she steps forward and reminds him about their agreement to stay cautious around barbarians and protect one another. Eren interrupts her thoughts, explaining that this barbarian might not be as dangerous as they initially thought. Hearing this makes her confused. At the same time, our boy speaks up and tells her to calm down for a bit. He deduces that their refusal of his food and the division of the night watch stem from their lack of trust in him. Eren feels guilty, quietly admitting to himself that he made a mistake, while the princess tries to deny it. Nervously, our boy contemplates the situation, wondering how to fix it. He reflects on the deep prejudice against barbarians in this world, realizing that as a barbarian from the white snowfields, he lacks detailed knowledge of it. Yet he guesses that outside the snowfields, barbarians must have done bad things to earn that hatred. He knows that at this point, even if he tells them that he is not a barbarian, they won't believe him. Suddenly, an idea strikes him and he smiles. He steps forward and announces that there is a misunderstanding, as both of them stare at him in confusion. Our boy confidently declares that he is not a barbarian. My man is outsmarting himself. He clarifies that technically he was born a barbarian, but he did not grow up like one. They both are dumbfounded, staring at him in confusion. Our boy recounts that about a week after his birth, his entire tribe was destroyed. An adventurer found him and raised him, though internally, he admits he is just making this story up on the spot. He reflects that sometimes a well-timed lie can work like medicine. Essentially, while born a barbarian, he was raised as a civilized man. Hearing this, the princess starts to calm down a bit. Cattle remarks that he knows it's not easy to accept, but he hopes she will gradually see that he is just like them. Our boy knows that he is talking nonsense, but he wants them to feel bad for him. As expected, the princess starts to realize how wrong she was to reject his kindness just because they thought he was a barbarian. Shame floods her face as she quietly apologizes, admitting that until now, she had not completely trusted him. Instead of being upset, he gives her a gentle smile and assures her that it's fine. This simple reassurance melts away the tension, and she visibly feels relieved. Cattle hides a small victorious smile, thinking the moment was a success. This makes her feel even guiltier for having doubted such a good person. Our boy reaches out toward her, suggesting that from now on, she can trust him. The princess freezes for a moment, then smiles and says yes while this is happening. A mysterious man stalks them from the trees. He is revealed to be the Tower Master we saw earlier, even though he is watching with his eye of observation. They are too far for him to hear. The man is surprised that someone like cattle could exist among barbarians. He wonders what it is about that white wasteland that produces such refined and civilized barbarians. The thought troubles him, and he quietly decides to move forward. As he steps ahead, our boy suddenly becomes alert and looks in his direction. The Tower Master freezes in panic, unsure whether the barbarian really saw him or not. The princess also notices the sudden tension on his face and asks what happened calmly. He informs her that someone is nearby and instructs her to stay put. Bro turns into the Flash and gets on top of the Tower Master. In no time, he appears above him in the air like a fierce hunter. The Tower Master's eyes widen in shock, and he quickly raises a fire barrier. But it's no use. The barbarian breaks through the barrier, sending debris flying in all directions. The Tower Master internally panics, screaming that it shouldn't have been possible. The barrier was strong enough to stop even a ballista, but it failed completely the next moment. We see him being pinned to the ground like a criminal. The barbarian warns him that he will break his neck if he tries anything stupid. With no way out, the Tower Master suddenly blurts out that he admires him, confused. Our boy asks if he's talking about him, and the man quickly confirms. He then asks for his name, and the Tower Master gives him the name Patrick. Moments later, the barbarian picks him up like a doll and brings him over to the tent. Meanwhile, the poor man wonders if Cain had also been like this. When the princess asks Cattle about the man, he reveals that he was tailing them when he got caught, and now he is claiming to be an admirer. This leaves her even more confused, but the man explains that he has always wanted to be a strong adventurer and looks up to the barbarian as a role model, having seen him help inquisitors fight demons. Of course, these are all lies, and the Tower Master just wanted to get closer to the barbarian. Hearing his story, our boy clarifies once again if this was the only reason he followed them. The Tower Master lets out an innocent smile and confirms it's saying that he couldn't help himself. Despite all this, our boy doesn't think he can simply let him go, since he still doesn't know if he is safe. Then suddenly, he gets hit with one of his brilliant ideas and lets out a wicked smile. One of the greatest mages of all time, the head of the magic tower, who possessed the body of a lich, had disguised himself as a human named Patrick, just so he could observe the barbarian. However, things didn't really go as planned, and he now finds himself tied up and standing right in front of our boy. After making sure the man is tied up good, he announces that it's time to move. The group advances through the forest path, with Patrick reluctantly dragged behind. For the first time, he's close enough to observe the barbarian in detail. He realizes what Cain meant. Now Cattle operates at an entirely different speed and level of power, capable of crushing magic with physical force. All of this makes him wonder if the barbarian is actually a hero class. Meanwhile, the princess quietly calls out to him, and he pauses. Looking back, he calmly asks her if she's ready to tell him everything. This shocks her greatly, as she realizes that he already knew everything. Our boy explains that it wasn't that hard to figure out, that they were hiding something. However, he understands her circumstances, and mentions that it's not easy trusting someone you don't know. The princess apologizes to him, and admits that she wants to reveal everything. Afterwards, he may decide for himself if he wants to continue the mission or not. Before she can say anything, he stops her and mentions that there is someone nearby. Moments later, they all watch as several armored knights walk in from the trees. The princess looks surprised seeing them, almost like she knows who they are. The knight commander bows and introduces himself as Lucinto Edenheimer. He turns to the princess and claims they've been desperately searching for her, intending to take her back to the kingdom. Instead of feeling relieved, the princess looks even more worried. The commander then turns to our boy, explaining that the person he's guarding is the first princess of the Luton kingdom. Cattle asks why the princess is here, and the commander explains she recently fled the kingdom, mistaking the barbarian for a mercenary. He announces that they will handle things from now on. However, the princess suddenly speaks up and refuses to go with him. With a strict tone, she questions who he is. This takes the commander by surprise, and he questions what she means. Clenching her fist, she asks him once again who he is, and this time he gives her his full name. Before he can even finish, she screams that she doesn't know him, accusing him of being an imposter who took over the real knight commander. The same thing happened to her friends, and even her own parents. The Tower Master finds the situation interesting and checks for himself who the knight is. Turns out the knight is actually human, which makes the situation even more confusing. Meanwhile, the princess continued, accusing him of trying to devour her, to overtake the kingdom. The knight commander silently watches as she screams about taking her revenge. He then turns to the other knights and comments that she has gone mad. This makes her even more furious. But he asks if she truly believes that everyone in the castle except her has somehow changed. For a moment she pauses, since she is unable to answer. The knight commander extends his hand and asks her to go back with her. The princess completely freezes, but in her mind, she doesn't want it to end here. Before he can get close, our boy steps in between them, taking her by surprise. Commander warns him to move aside, but he respectfully refuses. With no other choice, the knight commander charges forward, but our boy grabs him by his helmet and throws him back like a tennis ball. The other knights stare in horror, witnessing the fate of their commander. In his defense, the barbarian was only protecting his client, so he was justified at the same time. The knight commander gets back up and asks him if he really believes whatever she is telling is the truth. The barbarian replies that as a mercenary, he has to believe his employer. For some reason, his words send a shock through the princess. Hearing this, the knight commander says that they are all delusional. Our boy smiles and comments that he can't be the one saying that. Turning back towards the princess, he reveals that the knight appeared without any presence. In other words, they simply just turned up in the forest out of nowhere. This is surprising even for the tower master, who sensed the same thing. Our boy then turns to the knights and asks them how they appeared so suddenly. Instead of answering, the knight commander ignores his concern completely and simply claims that they are here for the princess. The barbarian realizes that they don't have an answer and mentions that he will take her to the kingdom of Denian. By himself, the princess looks down upon hearing this, since even in her own castle, no one believed what she was trying to tell them. The knight commander realizes that they can't solve this with dialogue alone. Cattle also recognizes this and orders everyone to step back for a bit. Turns out the men he is facing are the strongest knights in the kingdom, even after they draw their swords. He stands with a grin on his face. Meanwhile, the tower master analyzes them, noting that the rest of the soldiers are second-rate, since they can control mystic arts, but their commander is first-rate. Suddenly, he orders the knights to charge, and they rush in with the intent to kill. Our boy stands there like a mountain and simply starts smashing them with his bare hands. Punches are so strong that they do area damage and push all of the knights back. Even after seeing his knights get flown away, the commander still orders the rest to charge ahead. This time, the barbarian grabs two of them by their helmets and spins them around, also hitting the rest of them in the process. While he is distracted, the knight commander sneaks up on him from behind. Watching this, the princess screams to warn him, but to her shock, our boy turns into Saitama and bites off his sword entirely. After seeing this monstrosity, the commander does the responsible thing and orders his men to back off. As they leave, the princess asks him if he is okay. He assures her that he is not hurt and also promises to fulfill the request. But first he wants to know what actually happened. Hearing this, she takes a deep sigh and agrees to reveal everything. As they walk back to the tent, the tower master reflects on the nature of aura. He believes aura is the crystallization of mysticism itself, a power strong enough to cut through steel like paper and split magic apart in simple terms. Nothing in this world should be able to neutralize aura. However, what he saw in front of him completely shattered that logic. A simple barbarian stopped aura with his bare teeth, and his skin did not even receive a scratch. The group finally sits by the fireplace, while our boy once again questions what truly happened to them. The old man explains that their kingdom has been replaced by something else entirely. By the time he and the princess realized something was wrong, the kingdom had already collapsed. The barbarian asks him if this was the reason they fled. Aaron admits that if they had stayed, they would have been replaced just like everyone else. His voice trembles as he adds that this distortion began nearly a year ago. At that moment, Kettle's expression changes. He wonders if this is all a coincidence, since he remembers hearing something similar from the Inquisitor during their last mission. She told him that the dungeon appearances had become abnormal, and strange beings started appearing in their world. And all of it started a year ago. He didn't really think much of it back then, but he also heard something strange from the guy he met during his last quest in the snowfield. His thoughts are interrupted by the old man as he continues his story. After realizing that something was off, both he and the princess requested the court mages to investigate. However, the cause could never be identified. The only thing that changed was those people When cattle questions how they even figured out that something was wrong, the old man looks down and admits that it's hard to explain. However, everything about those people seemed unbearable, even though they acted and talked the same. Hearing this, our boy asks if it was just their intuition. The old man mentions that he also found it hard to believe when the princess first told him. However, he soon began to experience it for himself. His job was to manage and supervise the servants in the castle. One of them was a timid girl named Cassie. She was fragile enough to be scared by ghost stories, but at some point she stopped reacting to them at all. Initially, he didn't think much of it, since it's not abnormal to outgrow one's fears. But something happened afterwards that changed his mind. The girl was responsible for maintaining the statues, and due to her fragile nature, she would fear that they would fall over and her crush her. However, one day a statue actually fell towards her, and she barely managed to avoid it. But the only thing she was worried about was her punishment at that moment. He realized that the girl in front of him wasn't Cassie. Even though her behavior didn't change, he could tell that she was a completely different person. He tested this on other people in the castle and realized that most of them had already changed. Like her, this is why they fled, since they feared that they might also become like them. Our boy still doesn't understand why they are heading to the Denian kingdom, since there are other places they can go for protection. The princess explains that the king of Denian can make a human declaration. A long time ago, humans lived alongside other beings. But there was a man who wanted to create a kingdom, just for humans. He went to an unknown god to fulfill his wish. And as a result, he got the power to distinguish between humans and non-humans. That man was the founder of Danian Kingdom. Those carrying his blood have the ability to tell if someone is human or not. Our boy smiles as he realizes that stuff like this actually exists. In this world, he guesses that they're going to use that power to find solid proof and mentions that it's a good idea. The princess looks at him and asks if he's okay with this, but he assures her that nothing would change regarding their deal. Hearing this, she sincerely thanks him and promises to give him anything he demands. After completing this mission, the barbarian simply smiles and tells that he will be looking forward to this. The old man, however, has a completely different reaction. Later, as they both fall asleep, our boy sits with the Tower Master, who asks him if he truly believes the princess. He admits that he is not sure, but it's still possible. The Tower Master reveals that the knights he fought were actually human, but he already knows that. To make matters worse, he has made an enemy of an entire nation. Even if the princess is telling the truth, he might get in trouble simply for getting into all this. The man questions if he really accepted this contract, just to be their escort. After a moment of silence, our boy gets up and admits that he isn't actually here just for the escort job, simply thinks it's too much of a loss to miss out on a story this interesting. The Tower Master starts sweating as he realizes that this entire situation is nothing more than a game for this beast.